The thing about being married to a CEO is that you stop noticing when orders replace conversations. You're sleeping in the guest room until you apologize. Vivian stood in the doorway of our bedroom. Her bedroom now, apparently, with her arms crossed. She wore that charcoal suit she saved for board meetings, the one that made her look like she could fire you with a glance. It was 8:30 on a Tuesday night, and she'd just gotten home. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, unlacing my work boots. I didn't look up. "All right," I said. The silence that followed had weight to it. I could feel her waiting for me to argue, to defend myself, to do whatever it is that husbands are supposed to do when their wives issue ultimatums. Instead, I pulled off my left boot and set it carefully beside the right one. "That's it?" she said. "That's all you have to say?" "You told me where I'm sleeping." I said, "All right." I stood up, grabbed my phone from the nightstand. "Do you want me to take a pillow, or are those off limits too?" Her jaw tightened. "Don't be childish, Garrett." "I'm not. You gave me an instruction. I'm following it." I walked past her into the hallway. She didn't move, didn't step aside, so I had to angle my shoulders to get through the doorframe without touching her. The guest room was at the end of the hall, next to the office we never used because Vivian preferred working at the dining table where she could spread out her laptop and papers and make the whole house feel like an extension of her workspace. The guest bed was made with those expensive sheets her mother had sent us for Christmas 3 years ago. White Egyptian cotton, thread count so high it felt like sleeping on a cloud made of credit card debt. I sat down and the mattress barely moved, firm, unforgiving, appropriate. I heard her heels clicking down the hallway. She stopped outside the door but didn't come in. "This is because you embarrassed me in front of the Hastings," she said. The Hastings, Roger and Diane Hastings, investors in Vivian's company. We'd had them over for dinner on Saturday, and I'd made the mistake of mentioning that Vivian's new market expansion plan reminded me of a strategy that had tanked a competitor 2 years ago. I'd said it casually, the way you mention anything at a dinner party. Roger had laughed and asked follow-up questions. Vivian had smiled through the rest of the evening and hadn't spoken to me since Sunday morning. "I wasn't trying to embarrass you," I said to the ceiling. "I was making conversation." "You were undermining me." "I was talking about business. You know, that thing you do 18 hours a day." "This isn't a joke, Garrett." I sat up and looked at her. She was framed in the doorway, backlit by the hallway light, and for a second she looked exactly like she did in the magazine profile they'd run about her last year. Vivian Chen, the woman who built an empire before 40. Except her last name wasn't Chen, it was Monroe, mine, and the article hadn't mentioned me once except in the photo caption where I was identified as, husband Garrett Monroe. "I'm not joking," I said. "You want an apology, and I don't think I owe you one, so here we are." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she turned and walked away, and I heard the bedroom door close with a soft, final click. I lay back down and stared at the ceiling. The thing about Vivian is that she's always been like this. Decisive, uncompromising. It's what made her successful. When we met 11 years ago, I was working as a dispatcher for a freight company, and she was a junior account manager trying to coordinate shipments for a tech startup that was hemorrhaging money on logistics. She'd walked into my office with a spreadsheet and a problem, and I'd fixed it in 20 minutes by rerouting 3 shipments and consolidating 2 others. She'd looked at me like I'd just solved cold fusion. We got coffee that afternoon, dinner that weekend, married 18 months later. Back then, I thought her intensity was passion, drive, ambition, and it was. But somewhere along the way, passion started to feel like impatience, and drive started to feel like dismissal, and ambition started to feel like I was just another obstacle in her way. I didn't sleep well that night. The guest room faced east, and the sun came through the blinds at 6:15 and hit me right in the eyes. I got up, showered in the guest bathroom, and went downstairs to make coffee. Vivian was already in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone. She had on her running clothes, which meant she'd been up since 5 for her morning jog. She didn't look at me when I walked in. "Coffee's fresh," she said. "Thanks." I poured myself a cup and leaned against the counter. She kept scrolling. The silence stretched out like taffy. "Vivian," I said. "I have a board meeting at 9, she said, still not looking up. "I'll be home late. There's leftover chicken in the fridge." "Are we going to talk about this?" "About what?" "About you exiling me to the guest room like I'm a badly behaved dog." She finally looked up. Her expression was perfectly neutral, the way it got when she was negotiating contracts. "I told you what I need from you. When you're ready to give it to me, we can talk." "An apology." "Yes." "For having an opinion at a dinner party." "For undermining me in front of investors." I sipped my coffee. It was too hot and burned the roof of my mouth, but I didn't react. And if I don't apologize? She picked up her phone and her car keys. Then I guess you're sleeping in the guest room. She walked out. I heard the garage door open, heard her Audi start, heard her leave. I stood there in the kitchen for a long time, holding my coffee, watching the steam rise. The thing about being in logistics is that you learn to see patterns, routes, bottlenecks, inefficiencies. You learn to map systems in your head and find the weak points, the places where everything flows through a single channel and one mistake can cascade into disaster. I'd been doing it for 17 years. I was good at it. So when Vivian started coming home late 3 nights a week, always on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, I noticed. When she started showering immediately after she got home instead of collapsing on the couch like she used to, I noticed. When she started charging her phone in her car instead of on the nightstand, I noticed. I didn't say anything, I just watched. It was Thursday night, 2 days after the guest room arrangement began, and Vivian had texted me at 6 to say she'd be home by 10. It was now 10:45. I was sitting in the living room with the lights off, watching the driveway through the front window. Her headlights swept across the yard at 11:03. She parked, got out, walked to the front door. I heard her keys in the lock. She came in and saw me sitting there. "Jesus, Garrett, you scared me." She flipped on the light. "Why are you sitting in the dark?" "Waiting for you." "I texted you I'd be late." "You said 10. It's after 11. She dropped her bag on the entry table. "The meeting ran long. What are you, my parole officer?" "Just wondering where you were." "I told you. A meeting." "On a Thursday night. Until 11. She turned and looked at me, and something flickered in her eyes. Annoyance. Calculation. "Yes, Garrett. Some of us have responsibilities that don't end at 5 o'clock. I have responsibilities." "Do you?" It was a question that wasn't really a question. She walked past me toward the stairs, and I heard her go into the bedroom. Our bedroom, the one I wasn't sleeping in. I sat there for another 5 minutes, then I got up and went to the guest room. I didn't sleep at all that night. I lay in the dark and ran the numbers in my head. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Always home late, always a meeting, always a shower immediately after. Patterns. Friday morning, I got to work at 7:30. I managed operations for a mid-sized logistics firm called Meridian Freight, which meant I spent my days coordinating routes, managing drivers, and putting out fires when shipments went sideways. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable, and I was good at it. My office was a glass box in the corner of the warehouse floor. I could see everything from there. The loading docks, the dispatch area, the break room where drivers congregated before their routes. I'd set it up that way on purpose. Visibility, control. I was looking at a routing spreadsheet when my phone buzzed. A text from Vivian. "Dinner with clients tonight. Don't wait up." I stared at the message. It was Friday. Not Tuesday, Thursday, or Saturday. I texted back. "What time will you be home?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Late. Midnight, maybe. "Where's the dinner?" The dots took longer this time. Why does it matter? Just asking. The Ashford. Downtown. The Ashford was a steakhouse near the financial district. Vivian hated it. She told me once that the portions were too big and the waiters were too attentive, and the whole place felt like a parody of expense account dining. But apparently tonight she was fine with it. "Have fun," I typed. She didn't respond. I set down my phone and went back to the spreadsheet, but I couldn't focus. My brain kept running scenarios. The Ashford, midnight, clients she'd never mentioned before, clients who required dinner on a Friday night when she could barely be bothered to sit through a dinner party on a Saturday with people who were actively investing in her company. Patterns. I pulled up the browser on my computer and opened a private window. Typed in the Ashford restaurant reservations. Their website had a reservation system that showed available time slots. I scrolled through Friday night. 7 o'clock, available. 7:30, available. 8 o'clock, available. Every slot was available. The place wasn't even half booked. I closed the browser and leaned back in my chair. Maybe she'd made the reservation weeks ago. Maybe it was a private room that didn't show up in the online system. Maybe I was being paranoid. Or maybe Vivian was lying to me. I picked up my phone and texted her again. "Hope the clients appreciate the Ashford. I know how much you love that place." She responded immediately. It was their choice. I almost smiled, because that was the thing about Vivian. She was smart, she was ruthless, she was successful, but she was also arrogant. She thought I didn't notice things. She thought I was too passive, too accommodating, too willing to just accept whatever she told me. She'd been assuming that for 11 years. Maybe it was time to stop proving her right. I left work at 5:30 and drove home. The house was empty. I walked through the rooms slowly, looking at everything like I was seeing it for the first time. The living room with the furniture Vivian had picked out, all sharp angles and uncomfortable cushions, the kitchen with the espresso machine that cost more than my car payment, the dining room where we hadn't eaten a meal together in 6 months, the office where Vivian's papers were spread across the desk in organized chaos. I went upstairs to the bedroom, to her bedroom. Her laptop was on the nightstand, closed. Her phone charger was plugged into the wall, but her phone wasn't there. Of course not. She kept it with her now, always. I opened the closet and looked at her side. Suits, dresses, shoes arranged by color and heel height. Everything precise. Everything controlled. I went to my side of the closet and started pulling clothes off hangers. It took me 40 minutes to pack everything I owned into 3 suitcases and 2 duffel bags. Clothes, toiletries, the watch my father gave me before he passed, the photo album from when my mother was still alive. I carried everything down to my truck, 3 trips, and loaded it all into the bed. Then I went back inside and sat down at the dining table with my laptop. I opened a new document and started typing. Petition for dissolution of marriage. I'd done the research 2 weeks ago, after the guest room arrangement started. I knew what forms I needed, knew what information had to be included, knew how to file. It took me an hour to fill everything out. Name, address, date of marriage, assets, liabilities. I left the division of property section blank for now. That would come later. When I was done, I printed 2 copies, signed them both, put one in an envelope addressed to Vivian, left it on her keyboard in the office. Then I took the other copy, got in my truck, and drove to a Motel 6 on the east side of town. I checked in using cash. The room smelled like disinfectant and cigarette smoke, and the bedspread had a stain that looked like someone had spilled coffee or possibly something worse. I didn't care. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out my phone. No messages from Vivian. It was 8:30. She'd still be at her dinner. I set an alarm for 6 in the morning and lay down. For the first time in 2 weeks, I slept through the night. Saturday morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 23 text messages. The first call had come in at 11:42 the night before. The messages started at 11:56. Where are you? Garrett, answer your phone. This isn't funny. I'm calling the police. Don't be ridiculous. Come home. We need to talk about this. You can't just leave divorce papers and disappear. Fine. Stay wherever you are. I don't care. The messages got shorter and angrier as the night went on until the last one, sent at 3:17 in the morning. You'll regret this. I deleted them all without responding. I showered, changed, and checked out of the motel. My truck was packed with everything I owned, and I had no plan beyond getting coffee and figuring out where I was going to sleep tonight. The smart thing would have been to find an apartment, something short-term and cheap, but I wasn't feeling particularly smart. I was feeling something else, something cold and focused. I drove to a diner on the north side of town, a place Vivian and I used to go to when we first started dating. They made pancakes the size of hubcaps, and the coffee was strong enough to strip paint. I ordered both and sat in a booth by the window. My phone buzzed. Vivian, we need to talk, face to face. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed, talk to my lawyer. Her response came immediately. You don't have a lawyer. I will by Monday. 3 dots, then nothing. She'd stopped typing. I finished my coffee and left. The thing about disappearing is that it's harder than people think. You have bills, accounts, routines. People expect you to be places at certain times. Your absence leaves a shape. But I'd been planning this, not consciously maybe, but planning it nonetheless, since the night Vivian sent me to the guest room. I'd already set up a new checking account at a different bank and transferred half our joint savings into it. Legal, equitable, defensible. I'd changed my direct deposit at work. I'd made a list of every account, every subscription, every automatic payment that needed to be updated or canceled. I'd done everything except admit to myself that I was doing it. Now I just had to find a place to live. I spent Saturday morning looking at apartments. Everything in my price range was either a dump or a 30-minute commute from work. I saw 3 places that smelled like mildew, one with a bathroom that looked like a crime scene, and one where the landlord kept asking me if I was good for it, in a way that made me think he'd had issues with previous tenants. I settled on a 2-bedroom in a complex called Ridgeview Terrace, which had neither a ridge nor a view. The apartment was on the 3rd floor, had beige carpet and white walls, and a kitchenette that barely qualified as a kitchen. But it was clean, the lease was month to month, and the landlord didn't ask questions when I handed him first month's rent in cash. You can move in today if you want, he said, handing me the keys. Previous tenant left yesterday. Perfect. I moved in that afternoon. 3 suitcases, 2 duffel bags, 1 box of kitchen supplies I bought at a Target on the way over. It took me 20 minutes to unpack everything. The apartment looked exactly as empty after I was done as it had before I started. I sat on the floor in the living room and looked around. This was my life now. This was what leaving looked like. My phone buzzed. Not Vivian this time. A number I didn't recognize. Is this Garrett Monroe? I hesitated, then typed, "Who's asking?" "This is Paige Hartley. I work with Vivian. She asked me to reach out to you. I didn't recognize the name. I pulled up Vivian's company website and scrolled through the staff page. Paige Hartley, Director of Operations. Mid-30s, blonde, professional headshot with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. What does she want? I typed. She's worried about you. She asked me to make sure you're okay. I almost laughed. Vivian was worried. Vivian, who'd exiled me to the guest room for refusing to apologize for nothing, who'd been coming home late 3 nights a week smelling like someone else's cologne, who'd responded to divorce papers with anger instead of surprise. Vivian was worried. Tell her I'm fine, I typed. And tell her to stop using her employees to check up on me. She just wants to talk. Then she can call me herself. 3 dots. Then, she says you won't answer. That's correct. The dots disappeared. Paige didn't respond again. I set down my phone and lay back on the carpet. The ceiling had a water stain in the corner that looked like a map of something. A country, an island, a plan. Sunday I drove to a hardware store and bought a whiteboard, 3 different colors of dry erase markers, and a pack of pushpins. I mounted the whiteboard on the living room wall and stared at it for a long time. Then I started writing. Tuesday. Home late, 10:45 p.m. Showered immediately. Phone charged in car Thursday. Home late, 11:03 p.m. Showered immediately. Phone charged in car Saturday. Need data. Friday. Dinner at the Ashford. Home time, unknown. I stepped back and looked at it. Dates, times, patterns. It looked like something a detective would have, or a stalker, or someone who'd finally stopped pretending everything was fine. I picked up my phone and opened a new note. Started typing. Things I know. 1. Vivian is lying about where she is. 2. The pattern is consistent. 2. Thu. Sat. 3. She's defensive when questioned. 4. She's using employees to contact me instead of calling directly. 5. She threatened me. You'll regret this. Things I don't know. 1. Who she's with. 2. Where she actually goes. 3. How long it's been happening. 4. If anyone else knows, I stared at the list for a long time. Then I added one more line. Things I need to find out. 1. Everything I set down my phone and looked at the whiteboard again. This was how you approached a problem. You mapped it. You identified the gaps. You filled them in systematically, without emotion, without assumption. Vivian had taught me that, actually. Back when we first met, when she was trying to fix her company's logistics nightmare and I was the one who showed her how to break down a complex system into component parts. She'd been impressed then. I wonder what she'd think now. Monday morning, I went to work like nothing had happened. Checked in with the dispatch team, reviewed the weekend delivery reports, handled a problem with a shipment that got delayed in Memphis. Normal. Routine. At lunch, I drove across town to a law office I'd found online. The lawyer's name was Mitchell Vance, and his website described him as aggressive, experienced, and results-oriented, which I assumed meant he was expensive. His office was in a renovated Victorian house near the courthouse, all dark wood and leather furniture. The receptionist told me Mr. Vance could see me in 15 minutes. I sat in the waiting room and flipped through a magazine about fly fishing without reading a single word. Mr. Monroe? Mitchell Vance was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with the kind of face that looked trustworthy in a generic way. He shook my hand and led me into his office. So, he said, settling into his chair, you're looking at divorce. Already filed, I said. I handed him a copy of the petition. I need someone to handle the rest. He skimmed it quickly, nodding. Straightforward filing. How long have you been married? 11 years. Kids? No. Significant assets? She makes about 4 times what I do. We own a house together, joint accounts. Infidelity? I hesitated. Suspected. He looked up from the papers. Suspected or confirmed. I don't have proof yet. Yet? He leaned back in his chair. Planning to get some? Maybe. Here's my advice, Mr. Monroe. Don't. In this state, infidelity doesn't significantly impact property division or alimony. All it does is make the divorce messier and more expensive. If you want to end this marriage cleanly, file your petition, negotiate the assets, and move on. And if I don't want clean? He studied me for a long moment. Then you're hiring me for the wrong reasons. I'm a divorce attorney, not a private investigator. If you want revenge, find someone else. I stood up. Thanks for your time. Mr. Monroe. He didn't stand. Whatever you're thinking about doing, think twice. Divorce is hard enough without turning it into warfare. I walked out without responding. I spent Monday night in my empty apartment, staring at the whiteboard and thinking about patterns. Vivian had always been predictable in her unpredictability. She'd change strategies mid-negotiation, pivot a business plan overnight, fire an employee without warning. But underneath all that chaos, there were rules, logic, a system. She wouldn't risk her company for an affair. Too much to lose, so whoever she was seeing, it had to be someone discreet, someone who understood what was at stake, someone who wouldn't talk. And she wouldn't meet them at obvious places. No hotels where someone might recognize her. No restaurants where colleagues might be dining. Somewhere private, somewhere safe. I picked up my phone and opened the Maps app, typed in our address, started scrolling outward, looking at businesses, parking lots, residential areas within a 15-minute drive. There. A fitness center called Apex Gym. Open until midnight on weekdays. Open 24 hours on weekends. Anonymous. Public enough to be safe. Private enough to be discreet. I zoomed in on the satellite view. Large parking lot. Mostly empty in the evenings, according to Google's Popular Times feature. Side entrance near the back. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, late nights. Showers immediately after. I opened a new note on my phone and typed, hypothesis. Apex Gym, back parking lot. 2 Thu Sat after 9 p.m. Then I set an alarm for 8:30 Tuesday night and put down my phone. I didn't need proof for the divorce. Mitchell Vance had been clear about that, but I needed it for something else. Tuesday night at 8:30, I was sitting in my truck in the Apex Gym parking lot. I'd parked near the back entrance, 3 rows away from the building, facing the exit so I could see everyone coming and going. The lot was mostly empty. A few cars clustered near the front entrance, a couple scattered in the middle. One SUV parked by itself near the side door. I'd been there for 30 minutes and seen 5 people go in, 3 come out. None of them were Vivian. My phone sat on the dashboard, screen dark. No messages, no calls. Vivian didn't know where I was, didn't know what I was doing. For the first time in 11 years, I was invisible to her. It felt good. At 9:15, a silver BMW pulled into the lot and parked 2 spaces away from the side entrance. I recognized it immediately. Vivian's car, the one she'd bought last year after her company hit a revenue milestone. She'd been so proud of it, had made me go for a drive with her the day she brought it home, explaining the features like she was narrating a documentary. I watched her get out. She was wearing gym clothes, black leggings, a fitted jacket, hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked around the parking lot quickly, then walked toward the side entrance. She didn't go inside. Instead, she stopped near the door and pulled out her phone. Checked it, put it away, checked it again. She was waiting for someone. I slid down in my seat, keeping my eyes just above the dashboard. The truck's interior was dark. There was no way she could see me from where she was standing. At 9:23, another car pulled in. A black Lexus, newer model, expensive. It parked next to Vivian's BMW. A man got out. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with the kind of build that came from actual workouts, not just gym memberships. Dark hair, well-dressed even in casual clothes. He looked like someone Vivian would know professionally, like someone who belonged in her world. He walked over to her and they talked for a moment. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language was familiar. Comfortable. She laughed at something he said, touched his arm. Then they got into his car together. The Lexus pulled out of the lot and turned left onto the main road. I waited 30 seconds, started my truck, and followed. Following someone is harder than it looks in movies. You have to stay far enough back that they don't notice you, close enough that you don't lose them at lights or turns. You have to anticipate without being obvious. You have to be patient. I'd been doing logistics for 17 years. Patience was my specialty. The Lexus drove east for 10 minutes, then turned into a residential neighborhood I didn't recognize. Quiet streets, older homes, trees that created dark tunnels of shadow between streetlights. The kind of neighborhood where people minded their own business. The Lexus pulled into a driveway 3 houses down from a corner. I drove past slowly, watching in my mirrors. The man got out, then Vivian. They walked to the front door together. He unlocked it. They went inside. The lights came on in the front room. Then they went off again. I parked 2 blocks away and walked back. The house was a small ranch style, maybe built in the 70s, with a well-maintained yard and a mailbox that had the number 447 painted on it in reflective numbers. I could see the Lexus in the driveway, could see Vivian's BMW wasn't there because she'd left it at the gym. Smart. If anyone saw her car, they'd assume she was working out. No questions, no suspicion. I took out my phone and photographed the house from across the street. The address, the Lexus, the license plate. Then I walked back to my truck and drove home. When I got back to my apartment, I opened my laptop and ran the license plate through a database I had access to for work. Technically, I was only supposed to use it for verifying carrier information on commercial vehicles, but the system didn't distinguish between commercial and personal plates. The Lexus was registered to Trevor Ashford. Address, 447 Elmwood Drive. I opened a new browser tab and searched the name. Trevor Ashford. Age 38. Regional Director at Hastings Ventures, an investment firm that... I stopped. Hastings. Roger and Diane Hastings. The investors I'd embarrassed Vivian in front of at dinner. The people who'd laughed at my comment about her expansion strategy. Trevor Ashford worked for them. I sat back in my chair and started laughing. Quietly at first, then louder, until it turned into something that wasn't quite laughter anymore. Vivian had been having an affair with someone from her investors' firm. Someone who could influence funding decisions. Someone who could make or break her company with a word to his bosses. And I'd almost gotten in the way. That's why she'd been so angry. That's why the guest room, the ultimatum, the cold silence. I hadn't just embarrassed her at a dinner party. I'd nearly exposed her strategy. If Roger and Diane had started asking questions, started looking too closely at how decisions were being made, they might have seen the connection. Vivian hadn't been protecting her pride. She'd been protecting her business. I opened a new document and started typing everything I knew. Dates, times, locations, license plates, names. I documented the gym parking lot, the drive to Trevor's house, the lights going out. I cross-referenced Trevor's company with Vivian's recent funding announcements. Found a press release from 6 months ago about Hastings Ventures increasing their stake in Vivian's company by 40%. 6 months. That's how long this had been going on. I saved the document, backed it up to 3 different cloud services, and emailed a copy to myself. Then I added a new line to my whiteboard. Trevor Ashford, Regional Director, Hastings Ventures. 447 Elmwood Drive. Underneath it, I wrote, confirmed, Tuesday, 9:23 p.m. I stared at the board for a long time. Mitchell Vance had told me not to get proof, had told me it wouldn't matter in the divorce, had told me to stay clean, but this wasn't about the divorce anymore. This was about watching Vivian realize she'd underestimated me. Wednesday morning, I got a text from Vivian. I know you followed me last night. My stomach dropped. I stared at the message, trying to figure out how she could know. I'd been careful, I'd stayed back, I'd parked 2 blocks away. Then I realized she didn't know. She was guessing, testing. I typed, I don't know what you're talking about. 3 dots. They stayed there for almost a minute. Fine. Play dumb, but if you're trying to build a case against me, you're wasting your time. I filed for divorce. That's not building a case, that's ending a marriage. You know what I mean? I almost responded. Almost told her I had photos, had names, had documented everything. Almost gave up my advantage just to see her reaction. Instead, I typed, I don't want anything from you, Vivian. I just want out. The dots appeared and disappeared 3 times. Then, we should talk. In person. Like adults. No. Garrett. Talk to my lawyer. I turned off my phone and went to work. The thing about having proof is that it changes how you think. Before, I was reacting, following, responding to Vivian's moves. Now I was ahead of her. I knew something she didn't think I knew. I had information she didn't think I had. I was in control. I spent Wednesday mapping out Trevor Ashford's life with the same systematic approach I used for logistics routes. Social media was sparse. He kept a low profile online, which made sense for someone in his position. But LinkedIn gave me his employment history. A local business journal gave me a profile from 2 years ago when he'd been promoted. The Hastings Ventures website had a team page with professional photos and brief bios. By Wednesday evening, I had a file on him that would have made a private investigator proud. Trevor Ashford, born in Ohio, MBA from Northwestern, married once, divorced 3 years ago, no kids listed. Hobbies included golf and sailing, according to the business journal. Drove a Lexus. Lived alone in a house that Zillow estimated was worth $450,000. And he was helping my wife's company secure funding while sleeping with her. I wondered if Roger and Diane Hastings knew? Probably not. If they did, Trevor would have been fired already. Investment firms didn't tolerate conflicts of interest, especially ones that involved their directors having affairs with the CEOs they were supposed to be objectively evaluating, which meant Trevor had as much to lose as Vivian did, maybe more. I saved the file and added a new section to my whiteboard. Leverage points. Trevor's job, conflict of interest. Vivian's funding, ethical violations. Public reputation, both. I stared at the list for a long time. Then I added one more line. Timeline. Need more proof before moving. Thursday night, I was back at Apex Gym at 8:30. This time I knew the pattern, knew what to look for, knew how to be patient. Vivian's BMW pulled in at 9:17, 2 minutes earlier than Tuesday. She parked in the same spot, got out, waited by the side entrance. Trevor arrived at 9:25. Black Lexus, same confident walk, same familiar body language when he greeted her. They got in his car and drove to his house. I followed at a distance, parked in the same spot 2 blocks away, walked back and took more photos. Different angles this time, time-stamped, geotagged. When I got home, I added Thursday's data to my spreadsheet, created a timeline visualization, printed it out, and pinned it to the wall next to the whiteboard. 2 nights. Same pattern, same location, same people. Proof. Not for the divorce. Mitchell Vance had been right about that, but for something else. Something that was taking shape in my mind like a logistics route coming together, all the pieces falling into alignment. I picked up my phone and opened a message to Vivian. Then I closed it without typing anything. Not yet. Friday morning, Vivian called me. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail. 3rd time, I answered. What? We need to talk. Her voice was tight, controlled, the way it got when she was trying not to yell. I'm at work. Then talk to me after work. No. Garrett, this is ridiculous. We've been married for 11 years. We can't just stop communicating. You stopped communicating when you sent me to the guest room for having an opinion. I didn't. She stopped, took a breath. That was a misunderstanding. I was stressed. The Hastings meeting was important, and I felt like you were undermining me. So you banished me. I asked you to apologize. For nothing. For making me look bad in front of investors. I almost laughed. Investors. Right. Like Trevor. Silence. It stretched out for 5 seconds. 10, 15. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. What did you say? She finally asked. I said, investors like Trevor. Trevor Ashford. Regional director at Hastings Ventures. You know, the guy you've been meeting at Apex Gym twice a week for the last 6 months? More silence. Then, you son of a... Careful, I said. I'm recording this call. I wasn't, but she didn't know that. You're stalking me, she said. Her voice was shaking now. You're actually stalking me. I'm documenting a pattern of behavior that's relevant to our divorce proceedings. There's nothing relevant about... You're having an affair with someone from your investor's firm. Someone who has direct influence over your company's funding. That's not just infidelity, Vivian. That's a conflict of interest. Maybe even fraud, depending on how the money's been moving. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? She didn't respond. Here's what's going to happen, I said. I'm going to finish my workday, then I'm going to go home to my apartment, and you're going to stop calling me, stop texting me, and stop sending your employees to check up on me. We're getting divorced. That's final. Anything else you want to discuss, you can discuss with my lawyer once I hire one. Garrett, and if you try to retaliate against me in any way, professionally, personally, financially, I'll make sure Roger and Diane Hastings get a very detailed report about how their regional director has been helping your company secure funding. You wouldn't. Try me. I hung up. My hands were shaking. I set down the phone and stared at it like it might explode. That was the first time in 11 years I'd ever threatened Vivian with anything. It felt incredible. Saturday, I stayed in my apartment all day. Didn't go anywhere. Didn't check the gym parking lot. Didn't follow anyone. I just sat on the floor and stared at the whiteboard and the timeline and all the documentation I'd built, and I thought about what came next. Because this was the part where most people would stop. File for divorce, split the assets, move on, start over. But most people hadn't spent 11 years being dismissed and underestimated and treated like an accessory to someone else's ambition. Most people hadn't been sent to the guest room. My phone buzzed. Not Vivian this time. Trevor. We should talk. I stared at the message. Trevor didn't have my number, which meant Vivian had given it to him. No thanks, I typed. I think you're misunderstanding the situation. I don't think I am. Look, I don't want trouble, neither does Vivian. We can work this out. Already worked out. I'm getting divorced. 3 dots. Then, what do you want? I set down the phone. That was an interesting question. What did I want? Money? I'd get half the assets in the divorce anyway. Revenge? That's what this had all been building toward, wasn't it? But revenge was messy, emotional, the kind of thing that got people in trouble. I picked up the phone again. I want you to understand something, I typed. I have photos, dates, times, locations, a complete timeline of your relationship with my wife, and I have documentation of your position at Hastings Ventures and Vivian's funding arrangements. I sent it. Waited. You're bluffing. I attached a photo. Trevor's Lexus parked in his driveway. Timestamp. Thursday, 9:31 p.m. Geotag, 447, Elmwood Drive. The dots appeared and disappeared for almost 2 minutes. What do you want? He typed again. I want you to leave her alone. Stop seeing her. Stop helping her company. Walk away. And if I don't? Then Roger and Diane Hastings get my complete file, including a very interesting analysis of how Vivian's funding increased 40% right around the time you two started meeting. You can't prove anything. I don't have to prove it. I just have to make them ask questions. The dots appeared and disappeared. Then nothing. I set down the phone and looked at the whiteboard. This was what control felt like. This was what power looked like. And I was just getting started. Sunday morning, I woke up to silence. No calls from Vivian, no texts from Trevor, no angry messages or threats or attempts at negotiation, just silence. It was the kind of silence that meant something was happening that I couldn't see yet, like watching a storm build on the horizon, knowing it was coming, but not knowing when it would hit. I made coffee in my tiny kitchenette and sat on the floor with my laptop, pulling up everything I had on Trevor Ashford. The photos, the timeline, the connection to Hastings Ventures. It was all there, documented and organized, ready to deploy, but something was bothering me. I'd threatened Trevor yesterday, told him to walk away from Vivian or I'd expose him to his bosses. And he'd gone quiet. No response, no pushback, nothing. Trevor didn't seem like the type to just roll over. From what I'd learned about him, he was ambitious, strategic, successful. You don't become a regional director at a major investment firm by being passive. So why wasn't he fighting back? I opened a new document and started listing possibilities. Why Trevor went quiet. 1. He's calling my bluff. 2. He's consulting a lawyer. 3. He's talking to Vivian. 4. He's planning something. 5. He actually believes me and he's scared. Option 5 seemed unlikely. Men like Trevor didn't scare easily. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. This is Paige Hartley. We spoke earlier this week. Can we meet for coffee? Paige? Vivian's director of operations. The one who'd texted me on Vivian's behalf asking if I was okay. I stared at the message. This was Vivian's move. She couldn't call me directly because I'd told her to stop. She couldn't send Trevor because I'd threatened him. So she was sending Paige. Why? I typed. I think we should talk in person. About what? About Vivian. And what's happening? I almost said no. Almost blocked the number and went back to my coffee, but there was something in the way she'd phrased it. What's happening? Not the divorce or the situation, like she knew something I didn't. When? I typed. Today? Noon. The Bluebird Cafe on Maple. Fine. I set down the phone and looked at the whiteboard, added a new line, meeting with Paige Hartley, Sunday 12 p.m. Then I added underneath it, reason, unknown, assume reconnaissance. The Bluebird Cafe was one of those aggressively cheerful places with pastel walls and mismatched vintage furniture and a menu that had 17 different ways to prepare avocado toast. I got there 10 minutes early and ordered black coffee, no sugar, and sat in a corner booth where I could see the door. Paige arrived exactly at noon. She looked different than her professional headshot. Younger, tired, like she hadn't slept well. She spotted me immediately and walked over, no hesitation. Garrett, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. Thanks for meeting me. I almost didn't. I know. She ordered tea from the server, who appeared, then turned back to me. Look, I'm going to be direct because I don't think either of us has time for small talk. Vivian asked me to talk to you. I figured. She's worried. About what? Her company, her reputation, her affair? Paige flinched at the last word. So you know. About Trevor? Yeah, I know. She looked down at the table. I didn't want to get involved in this. I told her that. But she's my boss, and she's also my friend, and she's... She stopped, choosing her words carefully. She's making decisions that aren't good for anyone. Like having an affair with someone from her investor's firm? Like thinking she can control how this ends? I leaned back in the booth. What does that mean? Paige's tea arrived. She wrapped her hands around the cup but didn't drink. Vivian thinks you're going to try to destroy her. She thinks you're going to expose the affair to Hastings Ventures, tank her funding, ruin her company. I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet. That's the problem. She can't control what you do, and that terrifies her. Good. Paige looked up at me, and there was something in her expression I couldn't quite read. Sympathy? Concern? Garrett, I'm not here to defend what Vivian did. I'm not here to convince you to forgive her or take her back or any of that. I'm here because I think you should know what you're walking into. Which is what? Vivian is preparing to go to war with you. She's talking to lawyers. She's gathering evidence. She's building a case that you're unstable, that you're stalking her, that you're trying to sabotage her business out of jealousy or revenge or whatever story she's decided to tell. I felt something cold settle in my chest. She told you this? Not directly, but I've worked with her for 4 years. I know how she operates. When she feels threatened, she doesn't retreat. She attacks. And right now, you're the threat. I picked up my coffee and took a long drink, giving myself time to think. Why are you telling me this? Because I like you, Paige said simply. I've always liked you. You were always kind to me at company events, always asked how I was doing, always remembered details about my life that Vivian never bothered to learn. And because what Vivian's doing to you isn't right. She's your boss. She is. And after today, she might not be for much longer. Paige finally took a sip of her tea. I'm telling you this because I think you deserve to know what's coming, and because I think you should be careful. Careful how? Don't underestimate her. Don't assume that because you have evidence of the affair, you're safe. Vivian is smart, and she's ruthless, and she has resources you don't have. If you're planning something, make sure you think it through. Make sure you're prepared for her to fight back. I set down my coffee. Did she send you here to scare me? No. She sent me here to find out what you know and what you're planning. I'm supposed to report back to her. Paige met my eyes. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tell her we talked, that you seem stable and rational, and that you just want the divorce to be over. And I'm going to suggest that she leave you alone. Will she listen? Probably not, but at least I tried. We sat in silence for a moment. The cafe was filling up with the Sunday brunch crowd. Families, couples, groups of friends, normal people doing normal things. No one plotting revenge or preparing for warfare or sitting across from someone who is risking their job to deliver a warning. Why are you really doing this? I asked. Paige looked out the window. Because 6 months ago, Vivian asked me to cover for her, said she had a personal matter to attend to on Tuesday and Thursday nights, said she needed me to tell anyone who called that she was in meetings. I did it because she's my boss, but I knew what was really happening, and I didn't say anything. That's not your fault, isn't it? I knew she was lying to you. I knew she was having an affair. I knew Trevor was involved, and I said nothing because it was easier to just do what she asked. She turned back to me. So this is me saying something, maybe too late, but I'm saying it. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. Paige stood up, leaving her tea mostly untouched. Be careful, Garrett. And if you need anything, information, testimony, whatever, you have my number. She walked out before I could respond. I sat there for another 20 minutes, drinking coffee and thinking about what she'd said. Vivian was preparing for war, which meant I needed to be ready too. Monday morning, I called in sick to work. First time in 3 years. My supervisor sounded surprised, but told me to feel better and didn't ask questions. I spent the day at the county courthouse. The public records office was in the basement, a fluorescent-lit room that smelled like old paper and air conditioning that didn't quite work. I filled out request forms and waited in plastic chairs while clerks pulled files from storage. I started with property records. Trevor's house at 447 Elmwood Drive, purchased 2 years ago for $420,000, mortgage through First National Bank. No co-owners listed, no liens or judgments. Then I pulled business registrations. Hastings Ventures was a private equity firm, registered in the state 8 years ago. Roger Hastings was listed as managing partner, Diane Hastings as chief operating officer. Trevor Ashford was listed as regional director, responsible for evaluating investment opportunities in technology and healthcare sectors. Vivian's company, Apex Solutions, had received 3 rounds of funding from Hastings Ventures over the past 3 years. The most recent round, the 40% increase I'd found earlier, had been finalized 7 months ago. 7 months. Not 6, like I'd originally thought. I pulled the incorporation documents for Apex Solutions. Vivian was CEO and majority shareholder. There were 2 other board members listed, Roger Hastings and someone named Leonard Price, who I didn't recognize. I took photos of everything with my phone, saved them to the cloud, downloaded them to my laptop, created backups. Then I went to the law library on the 2nd floor and started reading about conflicts of interest in investment relationships. The thing about the law is that it's not designed for situations like this. There's no statute that says you can't have an affair with someone from your investor's firm. There's no criminal code that makes it illegal for a regional director to sleep with a CEO he's supposed to be objectively evaluating. But there are ethical guidelines, professional standards, contractual obligations. I found the Hastings Ventures website and pulled up their investment policy. Buried in the legal section was a code of conduct for employees. All Hastings Ventures personnel are expected to maintain professional objectivity in evaluating investment opportunities. Personal relationships that may create the appearance of a conflict of interest must be disclosed to management immediately. Personal relationships. Conflict of interest must be disclosed. I took screenshots of the policy and added them to my growing file. Then I searched for Trevor's name in local business news. Found an article from last year where he'd been quoted talking about the firm's investment strategy. We pride ourselves on rigorous due diligence. Every investment decision is based on objective analysis, not personal connections or relationships. I almost laughed. Tuesday afternoon, I was back at my apartment, staring at the whiteboard, when my phone rang. Vivian. I let it ring 4 times before answering. What? We need to talk about the house. Her voice was businesslike, professional, like we were discussing a contract negotiation. What about it? We own it jointly. We need to decide what to do with it. Sell it. Split the proceeds. I don't want to sell it. Then buy me out. I can't afford to buy you out right now. My assets are tied up in the company. I leaned back against the wall. Not my problem. Garrett, be reasonable. We can work this out without lawyers and court dates and all the expense and drama. We're both adults. You stopped treating me like an adult when you sent me to the guest room. I've apologized for that. No, you haven't. Silence. Then, fine. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I was stressed and I took it out on you and I shouldn't have done that. Is that what you want to hear? I don't want to hear anything from you, Vivian. I want you to talk to my lawyer. You don't have a lawyer. I will by the end of the week. This is ridiculous. We were married for 11 years. We loved each other. We built a life together. You can't just throw all of that away because of one mistake. One mistake? You've been having an affair for 7 months. Who told you 7 months? I smiled. She just confirmed the timeline without meaning to. Public records. Your funding from Hastings Ventures was finalized 7 months ago. Same time Trevor started making regular visits to your office, according to your company's visitor logs. Another silence. Longer this time. You looked at our visitor logs? They're public record if you know where to look. Your building requires all visitors to sign in. I made a request under the Freedom of Information Act. That was a lie. I hadn't looked at any visitor logs. But Vivian didn't know that. You're insane, she said. No, I'm thorough. There's a difference. You're stalking me. You're harassing me. You're trying to destroy my company. I'm documenting the truth. If that destroys your company, that's on you, not me. Trevor has nothing to do with our marriage. Trevor has everything to do with our marriage. You've been using him to secure funding for your company while lying to me about where you are and what you're doing. That's not just infidelity, Vivian. That's fraud. It's not fraud. Then explain it to Roger and Diane Hastings. I'm sure they'll be very understanding. I hung up. My hands were shaking again. Not from fear this time, from adrenaline, from the rush of finally being the one in control. I looked at the whiteboard and added a new note. Vivian confirmed. 7 months. Vivian defense strategy. Deny, deflect, claim victim status. Then I picked up my laptop and started drafting an email. The email sat in my drafts folder for 2 days. 2. RastingsHastingsVentures.com. DastingsHastingsVentures.com. Subject. Professional Conduct Concern Body. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Hastings, I am writing to bring to your attention a potential conflict of interest involving one of your employees, Trevor Ashford, and a company you have invested in, Apex Solutions. I have documented evidence that Mr. Ashford has been engaged in a personal relationship with Apex Solutions CEO Vivian Monroe for approximately 7 months, beginning around the time your firm finalized its most recent investment in her company. According to your firm's own code of conduct, personal relationships that may create the appearance of a conflict of interest must be disclosed to management. To my knowledge, this relationship was never disclosed. I am providing this information in the interest of transparency and professional integrity. Attached is documentation supporting these claims. Sincerely, Garrett Monroe. I read it 20 times. Changed words, added details, removed them, reworded the opening, made it more formal, made it less accusatory. But I didn't send it, because the moment I sent that email, everything would become real, irreversible, the nuclear option. And I wasn't sure yet if that's what I wanted. I told myself I was being strategic, waiting for the right moment, making sure I had all my evidence in order. But the truth was simpler than that. I was scared. Not of Vivian or Trevor or the consequences. I was scared of what it meant about me that I was even considering this, that I'd spent days following my wife, documenting her affair, building a case against her like she was some kind of logistics problem to be solved, that I'd turned into someone who kept a whiteboard full of evidence in his living room and spent his evenings drafting emails designed to destroy people's careers. I saved the draft and closed my laptop. Wednesday night, I drove back to the house. Our house? The one Vivian wanted to keep and I wanted to sell. I parked across the street and sat in my truck with the engine off, looking at the place we'd lived for 8 years. The front door I'd painted blue because Vivian said it would increase curb appeal. The windows I'd replaced 2 winters ago when the old ones wouldn't seal properly. The driveway where I'd taught Vivian how to change a tire because she'd insisted she should know how even though she'd never actually done it. All the small maintenance tasks that make a house a home. All the work that goes into building a life with someone. Wasted. The lights were on in the living room. Vivian's BMW was in the driveway. She was home. I got out of the truck and walked up to the front door. Used my key, still had it, hadn't returned it, wasn't sure why. The door opened and I stepped inside. Vivian? No answer. I walked through the entryway into the living room. She was sitting on the couch with her laptop, wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked up when I walked in, and her expression went from surprise to anger in about half a second. What are you doing here? I live here. You moved out. I still own half of it. I sat down in the chair across from her. We need to talk about this place. I already told you, I want to keep it. And I already told you, I want to sell it. She closed her laptop and set it aside. Why are you really here, Garrett? I told you, the house. No, you're here because you want something. You want to see me. You want to have some kind of confrontation. You want me to apologize or beg or I don't know what. So just say it. I looked around the room, at the furniture we'd picked out together, the paintings on the walls that Vivian had chosen and I'd hung, the bookshelf full of business books she'd read and novels I'd never gotten around to finishing. I want to know when it started, I said. When what started? Don't play dumb. When did you stop loving me? She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I never stopped loving you. You're having an affair. That doesn't mean I stopped loving you. I laughed. Couldn't help it. That's exactly what it means. No, it doesn't. Love is complicated. People are complicated. You can love someone and still need something they can't give you. Like what? What couldn't I give you? She looked away. Understanding, support, someone who gets what I'm trying to build. I supported you. You supported the idea of me, but you never really understood the pressure, the stress, the constant work it takes to keep a company running. You never understood why I couldn't just turn it off at the end of the day and be present. Because you never tried. I did try. I tried for years. But you wanted me to be someone I'm not. Someone who comes home at 5 and makes dinner and watches TV and lives a normal life. That's not who I am. I never asked you to be normal. I asked you to be honest. I was honest. You lied to me for 7 months. She stood up, pacing now. I didn't want to hurt you. So you thought having an affair would hurt less? I thought... She stopped, ran her hands through her hair. I don't know what I thought. I just knew that Trevor understood things you didn't. He understood the business. He understood the pressure. He understood me in a way you never did. Did he understand that he was risking his career? Did he understand that sleeping with a CEO he's supposed to be objectively evaluating is a fireable offense? Did he understand any of that, or was he just as stupid as you were? Her face went red. Don't call me stupid. What else do you call it? You risked everything, your company, your reputation, your marriage. For what? For someone who understands you? That's not complicated, Vivian. That's just selfish. Get out. This is my house, too. Get out. She was shaking now. Get out before I call the authorities. And tell them what? That your husband came to his own house to have a conversation? That my estranged husband is harassing me. Is that what Paige told you to say? Is that the strategy you're building? She froze. What did Paige tell you? Enough. I stood up. She told me you're preparing to go to war, that you're building a case that I'm unstable and stalking you and trying to sabotage your company. So let me be clear about something, Vivian. I don't need to sabotage your company. You did that yourself the moment you started having an affair with someone from your investors' firm. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I have documentation, photos, timeline, evidence of every time you met Trevor, every lie you told me, every time you violated professional ethics to keep your funding secure. And I have a draft email sitting on my laptop ready to send to Roger and Diane Hastings the moment I decide you've pushed me too far. She went pale. You wouldn't. Try me. We stood there staring at each other for a long moment. All the years of marriage, all the history, all the small kindnesses and shared moments and inside jokes. All of it reduced to this. Two people in a living room, threatening each other. I want you to leave, she said quietly. I will. But first, I want you to understand something. I didn't plan any of this. I didn't want this. I wanted us to work. I wanted you to apologize for the guest room ultimatum and for us to figure out how to fix whatever was broken. But you made a choice. You chose Trevor over me. You chose your company over our marriage, so now I'm making a choice too. Which is what? I'm not going to be the nice guy anymore. I'm not going to be the understanding husband who accepts whatever you tell him and doesn't ask questions. I'm going to protect myself, and if that means exposing what you did, then that's what I'll do. You're threatening me. I'm giving you a heads up. There's a difference. I walked toward the door, then stopped. One more thing. I'll be back on Friday to get the rest of my stuff. Whatever I leave behind, you can keep or throw away or burn for all I care. But after Friday, I'm not coming back here. I left before she could respond. Thursday, I hired a lawyer, not Mitchell Vance, someone else. Someone Paige had recommended in a follow-up text she sent after our coffee meeting. Her name was Andrea Colton, and her office was in a modern building downtown with glass walls and minimalist furniture. She was in her 50s, gray hair cut short, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my truck. Mr. Monroe, she said, shaking my hand. Paige Hartley speaks very highly of you. She shouldn't. She barely knows me. She knows enough. Andrea gestured to a chair across from her desk. She told me you're going through a divorce and that it's likely to get contentious. Is that accurate? That's one way to put it. I spent the next hour walking her through everything. The guest room, the affair, Trevor, Hastings Ventures, the evidence I'd collected, the draft email I hadn't sent, the confrontation at the house. Andrea listened without interrupting, taking notes on a legal pad. When I finished, she set down her pen and leaned back in her chair. All right, she said. First things first. The affair is irrelevant to the divorce proceedings. This state is no fault, which means infidelity doesn't impact asset division or spousal support. So from a purely legal standpoint, everything you've documented about your wife and Trevor Ashford doesn't matter. I know that. Good. Second thing. The email you drafted to Roger and Diane Hastings, don't send it. Why not? Because it opens you up to a lawsuit. Your wife could argue that you're intentionally interfering with her business relationships, causing economic harm, damaging her reputation. Even if everything you say is true, the act of sending it could be considered malicious. Even if it's in the public interest? Public interest is a high bar to clear. And your motivation isn't really about public interest, is it? It's about revenge. I didn't answer. Andrea leaned forward. Mr. Monroe, Garrett, I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to protect you. And right now, the best way to protect you is to handle this divorce cleanly and professionally. File your petition, negotiate the assets, finalize everything, and move on. Don't give your wife ammunition to use against you. What if she's already building a case that I'm stalking her? Then we defend against it, but we don't escalate. We don't give her more evidence to support her claims. We stay calm, rational, and focused on the legal process. What about Trevor? What about Hastings Ventures? Not your problem. If Trevor violated his company's code of conduct, that's between him and his employers. If your wife violated professional ethics, that's between her and her investors. You are not responsible for exposing them. You are only responsible for protecting yourself. I sat there for a moment, processing. So you're saying I should just let them get away with it? I'm saying you should focus on what you can control. The divorce, your finances, your future. Everything else is noise. She picked up her pen again. Now, let's talk about asset division. You said you own a house together? We spent another hour going through the details: the house, the bank accounts, the retirement funds, Vivian's company stock, which was complicated because it wasn't publicly traded. When we finished, Andrea walked me to the door. "One more thing," she said. "If you're serious about moving forward with this divorce, you need to stop engaging with your wife directly. No more conversations at the house, no more phone calls. Everything goes through me. Understood?" "Understood." "Good. I'll file the response to your petition and start the asset discovery process. In the meantime, stay away from her. Stay away from Trevor. And for God's sake, don't send that email." I nodded and left. Friday afternoon, I went back to the house one last time. I'd texted Vivian that morning to let her know I was coming. She'd responded with a single word: "Fine." When I got there, her car wasn't in the driveway. Good. I didn't want another confrontation. I just wanted my things. I let myself in and went upstairs to the bedroom. Started pulling items from the closet, the dresser, the bathroom, books from the nightstand, photos from the wall, the small things that made a space yours. It took me 40 minutes to pack everything into boxes. I carried them down to my truck, 6 trips total, and loaded them into the bed. When I came back inside for the last load, Vivian was standing in the kitchen. "You're really doing this," she said. "I told you I was." "I thought maybe you'd change your mind." I picked up the last box. "Why would I do that?" "Because we have history. Because we built something together. Because 11 years should mean something." "They do mean something. They mean I wasted 11 years on someone who didn't respect me enough to be honest." She flinched. "That's not fair." "Fair? You want to talk about fair?" I set down the box. "You sent me to the guest room. You had an affair for 7 months. You lied to my face every time I asked where you were. And now you're standing here acting like I'm the one who's being unreasonable. So no, Vivian, I don't think fair means what you think it means. I made mistakes. I know that. But you're not perfect either." "I never claimed to be perfect. But I was faithful. I was honest. I tried to make this marriage work even when you clearly stopped caring." "I did care." "No, you didn't. You cared about your company. You cared about your reputation. You cared about maintaining the appearance of a successful marriage. But you didn't care about me. Not really." She looked away. "That's not true." "Then prove it. Tell me right now, honestly, when was the last time you actually thought about me? About what I wanted or needed or felt? Not as your husband, not as someone who lives in your house and shares your name, but as a person?" She didn't answer. "That's what I thought." I picked up the box again. "I'm leaving. You can keep the house, keep the furniture, keep everything. I don't want any of it. Garrett, talk to my lawyer. Her name is Andrea Colton. She'll be in touch about finalizing everything." I walked out and didn't look back. Saturday night, I was in my apartment, unpacking the last of the boxes, when my phone rang. Trevor. I stared at it for a moment, then answered. "We need to meet," he said. "No greeting, no preamble." "No, we don't." "Yes, we do. This has gone far enough." "I disagree. Look, I don't know what you think you're accomplishing here, but threatening me and threatening Vivian isn't going to change anything. We're together. That's not going to stop just because you're angry about it." I sat down on the floor. "You think I'm angry?" "Aren't you?" "No, I'm strategic. There's a difference." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm not making emotional decisions. I'm making calculated ones. And right now, my calculation is that you and Vivian both have more to lose than I do." "You think I'm scared of you?" "You should be." He laughed. It sounded forced. "You're nobody, Garrett. You're a warehouse manager with a chip on his shoulder and a wife who outgrew him. You don't scare me. I have photos of you and Vivian together. I have documentation of your relationship timeline. I have evidence that you violated your company's code of conduct by failing to disclose a conflict of interest. And I have an email ready to send to your bosses anytime I want. So yeah, Trevor, you should be scared." Silence on the other end. "But I'll make you a deal," I continued. "You walk away from Vivian. You end the relationship. You remove yourself from any involvement in Apex Solutions funding decisions. And I don't send the email. You can't make me. I'm not making you do anything. I'm giving you a choice. Keep seeing Vivian and lose your job, or walk away and keep your career. It's really that simple. She'll never agree to that. I'm not talking to her. I'm talking to you. What's it going to be?" More silence. I could hear him breathing on the other end, could almost hear him running the calculations in his head. Risk versus reward. Career versus relationship. Logic versus emotion. "I need time to think," he said finally. "You have until Monday morning. If I don't hear from you by 9 a.m., I'm sending the email." I hung up before he could respond. Sunday was the longest day of my life. I sat in my apartment with my laptop open, the draft email on the screen, finger hovering over the send button, waiting. 9 a.m. came and went. No call from Trevor. 10 a.m. Nothing. 11 a.m. Nothing. At noon, my phone buzzed. Text message. I need more time? I typed back, no. This isn't fair. You're forcing me to choose between my career and my personal life. Welcome to consequences. Vivian and I are serious. We love each other. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I typed, did you love her when you helped her company secure funding? Did you love her when you were supposed to be objectively evaluating her business? Or did you love her when you realized she could make you both rich? He didn't respond. I looked at the email draft, at the evidence files attached, at the names in the recipient field. Roger and Diane Hastings, two people I'd never met. Two people who had no idea their regional director was compromising their investment decisions. Two people who deserved to know the truth. Or did they? Andrea Colton's voice echoed in my head. You are not responsible for exposing them. You are only responsible for protecting yourself. But what was protecting myself? Walking away? Letting Trevor and Vivian continue their affair? Pretending I didn't know what I knew? That didn't feel like protection. It felt like surrender. My phone buzzed again. Fine, I'll end it. But you need to delete everything you have on me. All of it. Photos, documents, everything. I typed, no, that wasn't the deal. The deal was you walk away. I keep the evidence as insurance. If you ever go near Vivian again, if you ever have any involvement in Apex Solutions funding, I send everything to your bosses. Those are the terms. That's extortion. No, that's protection. Take it or leave it. 3 dots appeared and disappeared for almost 5 minutes. Then, fine. I closed my laptop and leaned back against the wall. I'd won. I'd threatened Trevor into walking away. I'd protected myself. I'd maintained control. So why did I feel so empty? Monday morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from Vivian and a voicemail that was just her screaming at me for 3 minutes straight. Something about Trevor ending things, about me being manipulative and controlling, about how I was ruining her life. I deleted it without listening to the whole thing. Andrea Colton called me at 10. Your wife's lawyer contacted me, she said. They want to negotiate asset division. They're willing to buy you out of the house at fair market value. How much? She named a figure. It was less than I'd hoped, but more than I'd expected. Counter at 15% higher, I said. See if they bite. Will do. Also, they're pushing for a quick finalization. They want this done in 60 days. That's fine with me. Good. I'll start the paperwork. She hung up. I sat in my apartment, looking at the whiteboard, at all the documentation I'd gathered. It was over. The marriage was ending. The assets were being divided. Trevor was walking away. Vivian was losing control. I'd won. But sitting there in my empty apartment with nothing but boxes and a whiteboard full of evidence, it didn't feel like winning. It felt like survival. Tuesday night, I drove past Trevor's house. I told myself I was just checking, making sure he'd kept his word, making sure he wasn't still seeing Vivian. But really, I just wanted to see him. Wanted to see if he looked different now, if he looked beaten, if he looked like someone who'd lost. His Lexus was in the driveway. The lights were on inside. Everything looked normal. I parked down the street and waited. At 9:45, a car pulled up. Not Vivian's BMW. A different car. A Honda. A woman got out. Blonde, mid-30s. She walked up to the front door and Trevor let her in. I took a photo, just in case. Then I drove home and added a new note to my whiteboard. Trevor. Already moved on. Vivian. No longer relevant to him. Still watching. I stared at those words for a long time. Still watching, still documenting, still unable to let go. Andrea Colton had told me to focus on what I could control. The divorce, my finances, my future. But control was addictive, and I wasn't sure I could stop now even if I wanted to. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. This is Roger Hastings. We need to talk about Trevor Ashford and your wife's company. I stared at the message. Someone had told him, someone had exposed the affair, but it wasn't me. I hadn't sent the email, so who had? I typed back, when? Tomorrow, my office, 2 p.m. Don't be late. I set down my phone and looked at the whiteboard one more time. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. Roger Hastings' office was on the 32nd floor of a glass tower downtown, the kind of building where every surface reflected money and power. The reception area had marble floors and modern art that probably cost more than my yearly salary. The receptionist wore a suit that looked tailored and gave me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Monroe, Mr. Hastings is expecting you. Second door on the right." I walked down a hallway lined with photos of successful investments, tech startups that had gone public, healthcare companies that had been acquired, real estate developments that had transformed neighborhoods. Hastings Ventures specialized in turning small companies into success stories, like Apex Solutions, like Vivian's company. I knocked on the second door. "Come in." Roger Hastings was older than I expected, maybe mid-60s, with gray hair and glasses that made him look more like a professor than an investor. He stood up when I entered and gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Mr. Monroe, thank you for coming on short notice. I wasn't aware I had a choice." He smiled slightly. "You always have a choice, but I thought you'd want to hear what I have to say." I sat down. The chair was expensive and uncomfortable, designed to make visitors feel off balance. Roger settled back into his own chair and folded his hands on the desk. "I'll get right to the point. I received some information yesterday about Trevor Ashford and your wife. Information that suggests they've been involved in a personal relationship for several months." I kept my face neutral. "Where did you get this information?" "That's not important. What's important is whether it's true." "Why are you asking me?" "Because you're her husband, because you filed for divorce. Because if anyone would know about an affair, it would be you." I looked at him for a long moment. This was the moment, the choice. I could confirm everything, hand over my documentation, watch Trevor and Vivian's world implode, or I could deny it, protect them, walk away clean. Andrea Colton's voice in my head. "You are not responsible for exposing them." But Paige's voice was there too. "Vivian is preparing to go to war with you." "It's true," I said. Roger's expression didn't change. "How long have you known?" "A few weeks. I suspected longer, but I confirmed it a few weeks ago." "Do you have evidence?" "Yes." "What kind of evidence?" I pulled out my phone and opened the photos, showed him the images of Trevor's Lexus parked at the gym, the photos of them getting into his car together, the photos of Trevor's house with Vivian's car absent because she'd left it at the gym to maintain cover. Roger looked through each photo carefully. "These are time-stamped." "Yes?" "And geotagged." "Yes." He handed back my phone. "Why didn't you come to me sooner?" "Because it wasn't my business. I filed for divorce. I moved out. I was trying to move on." "But someone else thought it was our business." "Apparently." Roger leaned back in his chair. "Here's my problem, Mr. Monroe. Trevor Ashford is one of our most successful regional directors. He's been with the firm for 9 years. He's helped us identify and develop dozens of profitable investments. He's smart, he's careful, and he's never given us a reason to question his judgment. Until now. Until now." Roger removed his glasses and cleaned them with a cloth from his desk drawer. "And your wife's company is one of our largest active investments. We've put significant capital into Apex Solutions based on Trevor's recommendation and evaluation. If that evaluation was compromised by a personal relationship, then we have a serious problem." "What kind of problem?" "The kind that involves lawyers and potentially returning funds to our limited partners. The kind that damages our reputation and calls into question every other investment Trevor's been involved in. The kind that could destroy both his career and your wife's company." He put his glasses back on and looked at me directly. "So I need to know everything. When did the relationship start? How long has it been going on? Did Trevor have involvement in Apex Solutions before the relationship began or after? Was the relationship disclosed to anyone at either company? I need details, Mr. Monroe. All of them." I spent the next 40 minutes telling him everything I knew. The timeline, the pattern of meetings, the gym parking lot, Trevor's house, the correlation between the relationship and the funding increase, the fact that neither of them had disclosed the conflict of interest. Roger took notes on a legal pad, asking clarifying questions, verifying dates. When I finished, he set down his pen and was quiet for a long time. "This is worse than I thought," he said finally. "Why?" "Because Trevor was the lead evaluator on Apex Solutions. He wrote the reports that justified our increased investment. He presented the case to our investment committee. He had complete control over how we viewed that company." Roger rubbed his temples. "If it comes out that he was personally involved with the CEO during the evaluation period, every decision he made becomes suspect. Our limited partners could argue that we failed in our fiduciary duty. They could demand their money back. They could sue." "What about Vivian's company?" "If we pull our funding, Apex Solutions will collapse. They're dependent on our capital. Without it, they can't make payroll, can't fulfill contracts, can't operate. They'll be bankrupt within 60 days. I felt something cold in my chest. I'd wanted consequences. I'd wanted Vivian to face reality. But I hadn't thought about all the people who worked for her. Paige, the other employees, people who had nothing to do with the affair but who would lose their jobs if the company went under. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "I need to talk to our legal team. I need to talk to Diane. I need to figure out how to handle this without destroying everything we've built." He looked at me. "Can I have copies of your photos?" "Why?" "For our internal investigation. We need documentation." I hesitated. Once I gave him the photos, I lost control of them. They could end up anywhere, in legal filings, in court documents, in the media. There would be no taking them back. "I need your word that this stays internal," I said. "I don't want this in the news. I don't want my name attached to it publicly." "You have my word. This will be handled discreetly." I forwarded him the photos, watched them send, felt the weight of what I'd just done settle over me. "One more thing," Roger said. "The person who contacted me yesterday, who told me about the affair, they didn't identify themselves. They sent an anonymous email with some basic information but no evidence. Do you have any idea who it might have been?" "No." But that was a lie, because I knew exactly who it was. Paige. Paige, who'd warned me that Vivian was preparing for war. Paige, who'd given me Andrea Colton's name. Paige, who'd said she felt guilty for staying silent. Paige had blown the whistle, and she'd done it anonymously so no one could trace it back to her. I left Roger Hastings' office and sat in my truck in the parking garage for 20 minutes, trying to process what had just happened. I'd given Roger the evidence, I'd confirmed the affair, I'd potentially destroyed both Trevor's career and Vivian's company. I should have felt victorious, vindicated, satisfied. Instead, I felt sick. My phone buzzed. Andrea Colton. "We have a problem," she said when I answered. "What kind of problem?" "Your wife's lawyer just filed an emergency motion claiming you're engaging in harassment and attempting to sabotage her business. They're asking for a restraining order." "Based on what?" "Based on allegations that you've been stalking her, making threats, and contacting her business associates to spread false information about her personal life." "I haven't contacted anyone?" "Are you sure? Because they have a statement from someone at Hastings Ventures saying you came to their office today and made defamatory claims about your wife's relationship with one of their employees." "That's not what happened. Roger Hastings contacted me. He asked me questions and I answered them truthfully." "Did you provide him with evidence?" "Yes." Andrea was quiet for a moment. "Garrett, we talked about this. I told you to stay away from anything involving her company. I told you not to escalate." "I didn't escalate. He called me. And you could have referred him to me. You could have declined to meet with him. Instead, you handed over documentation that your wife's lawyer is now going to argue was obtained through stalking and harassment." "It wasn't stalking. I was documenting evidence for the divorce. We both know the divorce doesn't require that evidence. We both know you were collecting it for other reasons. And now those reasons are coming back to bite you." I closed my eyes. "What do I do?" "We fight the restraining order. We argue that your wife is using the legal system to retaliate against you for filing for divorce. We show that everything you did was legal and justified. But Garrett, I need you to be honest with me. Is there anything else? Anything else you've done or said or documented that they could use against you?" I thought about the whiteboard in my apartment, the timeline, the notes, the evidence files backed up to multiple cloud services. "No," I lied. "Good. The hearing is scheduled for Friday. Don't contact your wife. Don't contact anyone at her company, don't go anywhere near her office or her house, and for God's sake, don't talk to anyone else about this without calling me first." She hung up. I sat there in the parking garage, engine off, watching people come and go. Normal people with normal problems. People who weren't sitting in their trucks wondering how their lives had spiraled so far out of control. My phone buzzed again. Text message from an unknown number. "You just made a very big mistake." I stared at it. It could have been from Vivian. Could have been from Trevor. Could have been from anyone. I deleted it without responding. Wednesday night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on the floor of my apartment, still hadn't bought a bed, staring at the ceiling and replaying everything in my head. Roger Hastings' questions, Andrea Colton's warnings, the restraining order hearing on Friday. At 2 a.m, I got up and drove to Trevor's house. I didn't have a plan, didn't have a reason. I just needed to see it. Needed to see if Vivian's BMW was there, if she'd run back to him now that everything was falling apart. The street was quiet. No lights on in any of the houses. Trevor's Lexus was in the driveway, but there was no sign of Vivian's car. I parked 2 blocks away like I always did and walked back. The house was dark, no movement inside. I stood across the street, hidden in the shadows, and watched. Nothing happened. I stood there for an hour, just watching, and nothing happened. Finally, I walked back to my truck and drove home. When I got to my apartment, there was a note taped to my door. Cease and desist. Underneath it was a formal letter from Vivian's lawyer demanding that I stop all contact with her, stop all contact with her business associates, and stop all surveillance activities or face legal consequences. I took the letter inside and added it to my growing file. Then I looked at the whiteboard and realized something. I'd crossed a line somewhere. Maybe it was following Vivian to the gym. Maybe it was photographing Trevor's house. Maybe it was meeting with Roger Hastings. But somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being the victim and become something else. I just wasn't sure what. Thursday morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Monroe, this is Leonard Price. I'm on the board of Apex Solutions. I sat up. Leonard Price, the other board member I'd seen listed on the incorporation documents. What can I do for you? I'd like to meet with you, today if possible. There are some things about Vivian's company that I think you should know. Like what? Not over the phone? Can you meet me at the Parkside Diner on 5th Street, 1 o'clock? Why? Because Vivian is destroying her own company, and I think you're one of the few people who might be able to stop it. He hung up before I could respond. The Parkside Diner was a retro place with red vinyl booths and a checkerboard floor. Leonard Price was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with a cup of coffee. He was younger than I expected, maybe early 40s, with wire-rimmed glasses and the kind of face that looked permanently worried. Mr. Monroe, he said, standing to shake my hand. Thank you for coming. I almost didn't. I wouldn't have blamed you, but I think this conversation is important. He gestured to the seat across from him. Can I buy you lunch? Just coffee. We ordered and sat in silence until the server left. I'll get right to the point, Leonard said. I've been on the board of Apex Solutions for 3 years. I invested early, back when Vivian was just getting started. I believed in her vision, her drive, her intelligence. I still do, in some ways. But she's making decisions that are going to destroy everything she's built. And I think it started with Trevor Ashford. You know about Trevor? I've known for months. I'm not blind. I saw how they interacted at board meetings. I saw how our funding decisions suddenly became easier after Trevor came into the picture. I saw the pattern. Did you say anything? I tried. I asked Vivian directly if there was a conflict of interest. She denied it. Said I was being paranoid. Said Trevor was just doing his job. Leonard took off his glasses and cleaned them. I didn't push it because I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to believe that she would risk the company for a relationship. But she did. She did. And now everything is falling apart. Roger Hastings called me yesterday. Told me about the investigation. Told me they're considering pulling their funding. If that happens, Apex Solutions is finished. That's not my problem. Isn't it? You're still legally married to her. Your assets are still tied up with hers. If the company collapses, it affects your divorce settlement. And there are 37 people who work for Apex Solutions. 37 people who will lose their jobs if this goes sideways. I looked out the window, watched cars drive by. Normal people going to normal places. What do you want from me? I asked. I want you to not push this any further. I know you met with Roger Hastings. I know you gave him evidence. I understand why you did it. But if you keep feeding information to Hastings Ventures, if you keep building a case against Vivian and Trevor, you're not just hurting them. You're hurting everyone who depends on that company. Vivian should have thought about that before she started the affair. You're right, she should have, but she didn't, and now we're all paying for her mistakes. Leonard put his glasses back on. I'm not asking you to forgive her. I'm not asking you to protect her. I'm asking you to think about the collateral damage. Like Paige? He paused. You know about Paige? I know she warned me. I know she's been covering for Vivian for months. I know she's probably the one who sent the anonymous tip to Roger Hastings. She didn't. Then who did? Leonard was quiet for a moment. I did. I stared at him. Why? Because someone needed to. Because Vivian was getting reckless. Because Trevor was compromising his professional obligations. Because this was going to come out eventually, and I thought it was better to control how it happened. He leaned forward. I sent the anonymous email to Roger because I thought if Hastings Ventures investigated quietly, they could handle it internally. Fire Trevor. Reduce their stake in the company. Move on. No public scandal. No company collapse. No one losing their jobs. But I gave Roger evidence. I confirmed everything. You did. And now instead of a quiet internal investigation, we're looking at a potential lawsuit, a public scandal, and a company that's about to implode. Leonard rubbed his face. I'm not blaming you. You had every right to do what you did, but I'm asking you to stop. Don't give them any more ammunition. Let this play out without adding fuel to the fire. What about the restraining order? What about Vivian's lawyer claiming I'm harassing her? That's a defensive move. She's scared. She's trying to regain control. But if you stop engaging, if you step back and let the legal process handle the divorce, she'll back off. You don't know that. No, I don't. But I know Vivian, and I know that she respects strength. If you keep fighting, she'll keep fighting. But if you walk away, if you show that you're done, she'll let it go. I finished my coffee. I need to think about this. That's all I'm asking. Just think about it. Leonard handed me a business card. If you need anything, information, support, whatever, call me. I'm trying to save this company. I'm trying to save those jobs. And I think deep down, you don't really want to see it all burn either. I took the card and left. Friday morning was the restraining order hearing. Andrea Colton met me outside the courthouse at 8:30. She was wearing a different suit but the same expression. Calm, professional, ready for battle. Remember, she said as we walked in, don't react to anything their lawyer says. Don't make eye contact with your wife. Let me do all the talking. What are our chances? Good. They're claiming harassment, but they can't prove damages. They're claiming stalking, but your documentation shows legitimate evidence gathering for divorce proceedings. The worst case is a temporary order that expires in 30 days. Best case, the judge throws it out entirely. We went through security and took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The hallway outside the courtroom was crowded with people waiting for other cases. I spotted Vivian immediately. She was standing with her lawyer, a woman in an expensive suit who looked like she ate opposing counsel for breakfast. Vivian saw me and turned away. Monroe versus Monroe, the bailiff called. Courtroom C. We filed in. The judge was a woman in her 50s with reading glasses and an expression that suggested she'd seen every possible variation of domestic dispute and was tired of all of them. Vivian's lawyer went first. She painted me as an unstable, vengeful ex-husband who'd been stalking Vivian for weeks, photographing her, following her to various locations, and making threatening phone calls. My client has lived in fear for her safety, the lawyer said. Mr. Monroe has shown a pattern of escalating behavior that suggests he may become violent. We're asking for an immediate restraining order to protect Ms. Monroe from further harassment. Andrea stood up for my defense. She methodically dismantled every claim. The photos weren't stalking. They were evidence gathering for legitimate divorce proceedings in a state that, while no fault, still required documentation of assets and activities. The phone calls weren't threatening. They were attempts at communication that Vivian herself had initiated by calling me first. The meeting with Roger Hastings wasn't sabotage. It was responding to questions from a business associate who'd contacted me. Mr. Monroe has done nothing illegal, Andrea said. He's filed for divorce from a spouse who was having an extramarital affair. He's documented evidence. He's protected his interests. And now his wife is using the legal system to retaliate against him for exercising his rights. The judge listened to both sides without expression. When they finished, she removed her glasses and looked at me directly. Mr. Monroe, have you made any threats against your wife? No, Your Honor. Have you attempted to contact her after she asked you to stop? No, Your Honor. All communication has gone through my attorney. Have you been to her home or workplace in the past week? I went to our shared home last Friday to collect my belongings. I informed her in advance. I haven't been there since. The judge looked at Vivian. Ms. Monroe, do you have any evidence that your husband has made threats or attempted violence? Vivian's lawyer started to speak, but the judge held up a hand. I asked Ms. Monroe, not you. Vivian stood. He threatened to ruin my company, Your Honor. He told me he had evidence that would destroy my business relationships. Did he threaten physical harm? No, but did he threaten violence of any kind? Vivian hesitated. No. Then this isn't a matter for a restraining order. This is a divorce dispute. The judge put her glasses back on. The request for a restraining order is denied. Mr. Monroe has broken no laws. Ms. Monroe, if you have concerns about your husband's behavior, address them through the divorce proceedings. This court is not a weapon to be used against spouses you're angry with. We're done here. She banged her gavel, and we were dismissed. Outside the courtroom, Andrea smiled. That went better than expected. She denied it. She did, which means you're free to proceed with the divorce without additional restrictions. Vivian's lawyer will think twice before filing frivolous motions again. What happens next? We finalize the asset division. We file the final paperwork, and in 60 days, you're divorced. That's it? That's it. Andrea put a hand on my shoulder. You won, Garrett. Now stop fighting and let it be over. I nodded and walked away, but it didn't feel over. Saturday afternoon, I got a call from Paige. We need to talk, she said. No preamble, no greeting. About what? About what's happening at Apex Solutions. Can you meet me? Same place as before? 20 minutes later, I was back at the Bluebird Cafe, sitting in the same corner booth. Paige arrived looking worse than the last time I'd seen her. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, the kind of tired that comes from not sleeping for days. Thanks for coming, she said, sliding into the booth. What's going on? Everything is falling apart. Roger Hastings met with the board yesterday, told them about the investigation, told them they're considering pulling funding. Leonard tried to argue that we could survive without them, but everyone knows that's not true. We're dependent on Hastings' money. Without it, we're finished. How long do you have? Maybe 60 days, maybe less. Depends on how fast Hastings moves. I didn't say anything. Paige looked at me. People are going to lose their jobs because of this. Good people. People who have families and mortgages and lives that don't have anything to do with Vivian's affair. I know. Do you? Do you really know what you've done? I didn't do this. Vivian did. She's the one who had the affair. She's the one who created the conflict of interest. She's the one who put her company at risk. But you're the one who exposed it. You're the one who gave Roger Hastings the evidence. You're the one who... She stopped, took a breath. I'm sorry. I'm not here to blame you. I'm here because I need to know if there's anything that can be done to stop this. Like what? I don't know. Talk to Roger Hastings again? Tell him you made a mistake? Tell him the evidence was wrong? I'm not going to lie for Vivian. I'm not asking you to lie. I'm asking you to consider the consequences of what you started. I didn't start this. Maybe not, but you can help end it. I looked at her, at the desperation in her eyes, at the weight of all those jobs sitting on her shoulders. What does Vivian want? I asked. She wants you to recant, to tell Hastings Ventures that you exaggerated or misunderstood or whatever, to make this go away. And if I don't? Then 37 people lose their jobs. Then a company that Vivian spent 8 years building collapses. Then everyone loses. I was quiet for a long time. I can't do that, I said finally. I can't lie to protect her, not after everything she's done. Paige nodded slowly. I understand. I do. But I had to ask. She stood up. For what it's worth, I don't think you're the bad guy here. I think you got dealt a terrible hand and you're playing it the only way you know how. But that doesn't mean people aren't going to get hurt. She walked out. I sat there alone, drinking coffee I didn't want, thinking about collateral damage. Sunday night, I made a decision. I opened my laptop and pulled up the email I'd drafted weeks ago. The one to Roger and Diane Hastings, the one that laid out all the evidence, all the timeline, all the documentation. I'd never sent it because I didn't need to. They already knew. Leonard had told them. I'd confirmed it in person. But now I looked at that email and realized something. I had power here. Real power. The power to make this worse or the power to make it stop. I could send the email anyway. I could add more details, more evidence, more ammunition for Hastings Ventures to use against Vivian and Trevor. I could make absolutely sure they pulled their funding and destroyed Apex Solutions. Or I could do nothing. Let the investigation play out. Let Hastings make their own decision without additional pressure from me. I stared at the email for 20 minutes. Then I deleted it. Not because I forgave Vivian, not because I wanted to protect her, but because Paige was right. There were 37 people who didn't deserve to lose their jobs because their CEO made bad decisions. I closed the laptop and looked at the whiteboard one last time. All that documentation, all that evidence, all those hours spent following and photographing and building a case. For what? The divorce was happening. The assets would be divided. Vivian and I would go our separate ways. The rest of it, the affair, the company, the consequences, that wasn't my responsibility. Andrea Colton had been right all along. I needed to let it go. Monday morning, I called Andrea. I want to finalize the divorce as quickly as possible, I said. Accept whatever settlement Vivian's lawyer offered. I don't care about the house. I don't care about maximizing my assets. I just want this over. Andrea was quiet for a moment. Are you sure? We can push for better terms. I'm sure. Draw up the papers. Let's finish this. All right. I'll have something ready by Wednesday. I hung up and looked around my apartment. At the boxes I still hadn't fully unpacked. At the whiteboard I needed to take down. At the temporary life I'd built while I was busy trying to destroy my old one. It was time to actually move forward. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Thank you. I stared at it. Didn't recognize the number, couldn't tell who it was from. But I had a guess. Leonard Price. Or maybe Paige, or maybe even Vivian, though I doubted she'd ever thank me for anything. I deleted the message without responding. Wednesday afternoon, I met Andrea at her office to sign the final divorce papers. The settlement was straightforward. Vivian kept the house. I got half its value in cash, paid out over 12 months. We split the joint accounts 50-50. I kept my retirement fund, she kept hers. No spousal support either way. Clean, simple, fair. That's it, Andrea said, collecting the signed papers. I'll file these with the court today. In 60 days, your marriage is officially dissolved. Thank you. You're welcome. And Garrett, I know this has been difficult, but you handled it better than most people would have? Did I? She smiled. You didn't end up in prison. You didn't do anything stupid. You protected yourself. That's better than a lot of men in your situation. I left her office and drove to Apex Gym. I hadn't been there since the night I'd followed Vivian and Trevor, hadn't parked in that back lot, hadn't watched the side entrance, hadn't played surveillance operative, but I wanted to see it one more time, wanted to see the place where everything had started to unravel. The parking lot was mostly empty, mid-afternoon on a Wednesday. The serious gym people came early morning or late evening. I parked near the back entrance and sat with the engine off. At 3:30, a familiar car pulled in. Vivian's BMW. I watched her park in the same spot she'd always parked. Watched her get out, wearing the same gym clothes she'd always worn. Watched her walk to the side entrance. But this time, no one met her there. She stood by the door for 5 minutes, checking her phone, looking around, waiting. No one came. After 10 minutes, she went inside, alone. I started my truck and drove away. Thursday morning, Roger Hastings called me. Mr. Monroe, I wanted to update you on our investigation. You don't owe me an update. Perhaps not, but you were instrumental in bringing this matter to our attention, so I thought you should know the outcome. He paused. We've decided to maintain our investment in Apex Solutions. I almost dropped the phone. Why? Because after extensive review, we determined that while Trevor Ashford exercised poor judgment in maintaining a personal relationship with Ms. Monroe, the underlying business evaluation was sound. Apex Solutions is a profitable company with strong fundamentals. Pulling our funding would harm our own investors as much as it would harm Ms. Monroe. What about Trevor? Trevor Ashford is no longer with Hastings Ventures. His employment was terminated yesterday. We've also reassigned oversight of Apex Solutions to a different regional director who will conduct a fresh evaluation of our investment. And Vivian? Ms. Monroe has been informed that any future funding decisions will be contingent on enhanced transparency and independent board oversight. We've also required that Leonard Price expand the board to include additional independent directors who can provide checks and balances on management decisions. So she gets away with it. She faces consequences, Mr. Monroe. Her reputation has taken a hit. Her autonomy has been reduced. Her company is under increased scrutiny. But yes, she survives. Sometimes that's how these situations resolve. I didn't know what to say. For what it's worth, Roger continued, I think you handled this situation with more restraint than most people would have. You could have made this much worse. You chose not to. That says something about your character. Or my weakness. There's nothing weak about choosing not to destroy people when you have the power to do so. That's called wisdom. He hung up. I sat in my apartment, processing. Vivian's company would survive. The employees would keep their jobs. Paige wouldn't have to watch everything collapse. And Trevor was done. Fired. Career over. The regional director who'd helped his girlfriend secure funding, who'd violated his company's ethics, who'd thought he was too smart to get caught. Gone. I should have felt satisfied. But I just felt tired. Friday afternoon, Paige called me. I heard about the divorce settlement, she said. I'm sorry it ended this way. Are you? Yes. I liked you and Vivian together. I thought you balanced each other. We didn't balance each other. She ignored me and I enabled her. Paige was quiet. Maybe, but for what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Walking away, not pushing it further. A lot of people here are grateful for that, even if they don't know it was you who made that choice. How's the company? Surviving. Barely. Hastings is staying, but with new conditions. Vivian is furious about the oversight, but she's accepting it because she doesn't have a choice. Leonard is working overtime to stabilize things. And I'm looking for a new job because I can't keep working for someone I don't trust. I'm sorry. Don't be. This is all her doing, not yours. Paige paused. There's something I need to tell you, something you should know. What? Vivian is seeing someone new. Started about a week ago. Already? Already. Some guy she met at a business conference. Similar profile to Trevor, successful, ambitious, probably has something she wants access to. I almost laughed. That was fast. That's Vivian. She doesn't like being alone. She doesn't like not being in control. So she finds someone new who makes her feel powerful. Does this guy know about the divorce? About what happened with Trevor? I don't know, but I doubt she told him the truth. Vivian's good at rewriting history. She always was. We sat in silence for a moment. Take care of yourself, Garrett, Paige said finally. You deserve better than what you got. So do you. She hung up. I looked at the whiteboard one last time, all those notes, all that documentation, all those hours spent trying to understand what had happened to my marriage. I took a photo of it with my phone. Not to keep as evidence, just to remember. To remind myself of what obsession looked like, what control felt like when you couldn't let go. Then I took it all down, erased everything, rolled up the whiteboard and put it in the closet. Saturday morning, I went to a furniture store and bought a bed. A real bed, with a frame and a mattress and sheets that I picked out myself. Not expensive sheets like Vivian preferred, just normal, comfortable sheets. The delivery guys brought it that afternoon, and I spent an hour setting it up. Made the bed, put on the pillows, stood back and looked at it. My bed, in my apartment, in my life. I lay down on it and stared at the ceiling. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Sunday night, 2 weeks later, I was at a bar with some guys from work. Nothing fancy, just a neighborhood place with cheap beer and sports on TV. We were talking about nothing, work stuff, weekend plans, someone's fantasy football team, when I looked up and saw her. Vivian. She was sitting at a table in the corner with a man I didn't recognize. He was wearing an expensive suit. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen before. They were leaning close, talking quietly, the way people do when they're in the early stages of something. She looked happy. She hadn't seen me yet. I could leave, could walk out before she noticed, could avoid the whole awkward situation. But I didn't. I stood up and walked over to their table. Vivian. She looked up and her expression went from surprise to anger to something neutral in about 2 seconds. Garrett, what are you doing here? Having a drink with friends. You? The same. She gestured to the man. This is David. David, this is Garrett, my ex-husband. Soon-to-be ex-husband, I corrected. We're not officially divorced for another 6 weeks. David looked uncomfortable. Nice to meet you. You too. I looked at Vivian. Can I talk to you for a minute? Private? She hesitated, then nodded. We walked to an empty corner of the bar, away from both her date and my coworkers. What do you want? She asked. Nothing. I just saw you and thought I should say something. Like what? Like I hope you're happy. Like I hope this one works out better than I did. She looked at me for a long moment. Are you being serious or sarcastic? Serious. Mostly. I don't believe you. I don't care if you believe me. I'm saying it anyway. I paused. For what it's worth, I don't hate you. I'm angry at what you did. I'm disappointed in how you handled things. But I don't hate you. That's generous of you. It's not generosity. It's just reality. Hating you would mean I still care. And I don't. Not anymore? She flinched slightly. Well, that's honest, at least. I'm done lying, Vivian. To you, to myself, to everyone. I spent 11 years pretending things were fine when they weren't. I'm not doing that anymore. So this is what? Closure? Call it whatever you want. I just wanted you to know that I'm moving on. For real this time. Not planning, not plotting, not documenting. Just moving on. Good for you. Yeah, good for me. I turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing. Does David know about Trevor, about what happened? That's none of your business. You're right. It's not. But you might want to tell him before he finds out some other way. Trust me on that one. I walked back to my table, finished my beer, left with my coworkers, didn't look back. That night I lay in my new bed and thought about everything that had happened. The guest room, the divorce papers, the surveillance, the threats, the evidence, the investigation, the restraining order hearing, the settlement. All of it led to this. Me, alone in an apartment, starting over at 40. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined 11 years ago when I married Vivian. But it also wasn't the disaster it could have been. I'd survived. I'd protected myself. I'd made choices that I could live with. And I'd learned something important. Revenge doesn't fix anything. It doesn't heal wounds or restore what was lost. It just creates new problems. I'd had the power to destroy Vivian completely, to ruin her company, tank her reputation, expose her in the most public and humiliating way possible. I'd chosen not to. Not because she deserved mercy, but because I deserved peace. And you can't find peace while you're burning down someone else's world. I closed my eyes and fell asleep. For the first time in months, I didn't dream about whiteboards or evidence files or parking lot surveillance. I just slept, and that was enough. 3 weeks after signing the divorce papers, I got a call at work from a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Monroe? This is Detective Sarah Brennan with the Metro Police Department. I need to ask you some questions about an incident involving your wife. My stomach dropped. What kind of incident? Can you come down to the station? I'd rather discuss this in person. Am I being accused of something? No, sir. We just need your statement. Can you be here in an hour? I told my supervisor I had a family emergency and drove downtown to the police station. Detective Brennan was waiting in an interview room, a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a no-nonsense expression. Thank you for coming in, Mr. Monroe. Please, sit down. I sat. What's this about? There was an incident at your wife's residence last night. Someone vandalized her property, slashed her tires, spray-painted her garage door, broke several windows. Neighbors reported hearing noise around 2 a.m. but didn't see anyone. And you think I did it? Your wife seems to think you might have been involved. I was home, asleep, in my apartment on the other side of town. Can anyone verify that? No, I live alone. Detective Brennan opened a folder and pulled out some photos. The damage was extensive. All 4 tires on Vivian's BMW were flat. The garage door had red spray paint across it. 3 windows were shattered. The message on the garage door was crude, liar. That's not my handwriting, I said. We're not asking for handwriting analysis. We're asking where you were last night between midnight and 3 a.m. At home, like I said. Do you have any proof? Credit card transactions, phone records, anything that would place you there? I don't know. Maybe. I can check. Detective Brennan closed the folder. Mr. Monroe, I've read the restraining order request that your wife filed. I know about the divorce. I know there's bad feelings between you two. So I'm going to be straight with you. If you did this, now's the time to come clean. Property vandalism is serious, but it's not the end of the world. We can work something out. I didn't do it. Then who did? I don't know. But Vivian has a lot of people who might be angry with her. Employees she's fired. Business associates she's screwed over. An ex-lover who lost his job because of her. You're talking about Trevor Ashford? Did Vivian mention him? She said the affair ended weeks ago and Mr. Ashford moved out of state. I almost laughed. He moved out of state? When? According to your wife, about 10 days ago. Did you verify that? Detective Brennan looked at me with renewed interest. Why would I need to verify it? Because Trevor Ashford lost his job because of the affair. He got fired from a prestigious investment firm, probably lost his professional reputation, and I'm guessing he blames Vivian for all of it. If anyone has a reason to vandalize her property, it's him. Do you have any evidence of that? No, but I bet if you check his current address and his whereabouts last night, you'll find something interesting. Detective Brennan made a note. We'll look into it. In the meantime, can you provide proof of your location last night? I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. I ordered food delivery at 9:30. Pizza. Should show the transaction and the delivery address. I showed her the screen. She wrote down the information. All right. We may have follow-up questions, but for now, you're free to go. Don't leave town, and if you think of anything else, call me. She handed me a business card. I left the police station and sat in my truck for 20 minutes, trying to process. Someone had vandalized Vivian's house. Someone angry enough to slash tires and break windows. Someone who knew where she lived and wasn't afraid to make noise in the middle of the night. And Vivian had immediately assumed it was me. Of course she had. I pulled out my phone and called Andrea Colton. The police just questioned me about vandalism at Vivian's house, I said when she answered. She's accusing me. Did you do it? No. Can you prove it? I have a food delivery receipt from last night. Time-stamped. Shows I was at my apartment. Good. Forward that to me. I'll send it to the detective in charge. In the meantime, do not contact Vivian. Do not go near her house. Do not do anything that could be construed as suspicious. I wasn't planning to. Good. Because this is exactly what I warned you about. She's looking for ways to paint you as dangerous. Don't give her ammunition. She hung up. I drove back to work but couldn't focus. Kept thinking about those photos Detective Brennan had shown me. The slashed tires, the broken windows, the word liar spray-painted across the garage door. Someone was angry. Really angry. And if it wasn't me, then who? That night, I did something I'd promised myself I wouldn't do. I drove to Trevor's house. The street looked the same as it had the last time I'd been there. Quiet, dark, residential. Trevor's Lexus wasn't in the driveway. I parked down the block and walked up to the house. No lights on. Mail piling up in the mailbox. Newspapers on the front step. The place looked abandoned. I walked around to the back, peered through the windows. The furniture was still there, but everything looked untouched. No dishes in the sink. No signs of life. Vivian had said Trevor moved out of state. Maybe she'd been telling the truth. I was about to leave when I heard a voice behind me. "Can I help you?" I turned. An older woman was standing on the sidewalk, walking a small dog. She was looking at me with the kind of suspicion that comes from years of neighborhood watch meetings. "Sorry," I said. "I was looking for Trevor Ashford. I'm an old friend." "Trevor moved," the woman said. "About 2 weeks ago. Middle of the night, actually. Movers came and cleared out most of his stuff. Haven't seen him since." "Do you know where he went?" "No idea. He didn't say goodbye to anyone. Just left." She looked at me more closely. "You sure you're a friend? Because you don't look like his usual crowd." "We work together," I was hoping to get in touch. "Well, he's gone. And good riddance, if you ask me. Never was friendly. Kept odd hours. Had all sorts of people coming and going at strange times." "What kind of people?" She shrugged. "I mind my business, but I know what I see. And what I saw was someone who wasn't putting down roots in this neighborhood." I thanked her and walked back to my truck. Trevor was gone. Really gone. Packed up and left in the middle of the night 2 weeks ago. Right around the time Hastings Ventures fired him. So if Trevor was out of state, he couldn't have vandalized Vivian's house last night, which meant someone else did. Tuesday morning, Detective Brennan called me back. "Mr. Monroe, I wanted to update you. We checked Trevor Ashford's current location. He's in Colorado. Has been for 10 days. We verified it with his new employer and his apartment lease. So he's not a suspect in the vandalism." "Then who is?" "We're still investigating, but I wanted you to know that your alibi checks out. The delivery receipt, combined with the fact that there's no evidence placing you at the scene, means we're clearing you as a suspect." "Did you tell Vivian?" "I informed her that we've eliminated several suspects and are continuing to investigate." "Did she take it well?" Detective Brennan paused. "Ms. Monroe is frustrated. She seems very certain that you were involved." "She's paranoid." "Maybe, or maybe she knows something we don't. Is there anything else you want to tell me about your relationship with your wife? Anything that might help us understand who would target her?" I thought about it. Thought about Leonard Price and Paige and all the employees at Apex Solutions who might have reason to be angry. Thought about Roger Hastings and the investigation and the fallout from the affair. "Vivian makes enemies," I said. "She's brilliant, but she's also ruthless. She fires people without warning. She uses people for her own advancement. She burns bridges. So yeah, there are probably a lot of people who don't like her." "Can you give me names?" "No, because I don't know who specifically would go this far. But I know my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, and I know she's not good at seeing how her actions affect other people, so whoever did this, they probably had a good reason, at least in their mind." "That's not helpful, Mr. Monroe." "I know, but it's the truth." She hung up. I sat in my apartment and thought about vandalism. About someone angry enough to break windows and slash tires. About someone who knew where Vivian lived and wanted to send a message. Liar, not cheater. Not something about the affair. Just liar. Someone who felt lied to, betrayed, used. The list of people who could fit that description was longer than I wanted to admit. Wednesday afternoon, I got a text from Paige. "Did you hear about Vivian's house?" "Yeah. Police questioned me, I figured. She told everyone at work that you did it. I didn't, I know, but she's convinced. She's been telling anyone who'll listen that you're dangerous and unstable and trying to ruin her life." I stared at the phone. Even now, even after everything, Vivian was trying to control the narrative, trying to paint herself as the victim and me as the villain. Let her talk. I don't care what she tells people. You should care. She's damaging your reputation. She's telling clients and business associates and anyone with ears that you're harassing her. Can't do anything about it. She can say what she wants. That's not fair. Nothing about this situation is fair. Paige didn't respond for a few minutes. Then, for what it's worth, most people don't believe her. We all know what really happened. We know she had the affair. We know she lied. We know she's just trying to deflect blame. Thanks. That helps. I'm leaving the company next week. Found a new job. Better pay, better boss, better everything. I just wanted you to know that not everyone at Apex Solutions thinks you're the bad guy. Good luck with the new job. Thanks. And Garrett, take care of yourself. This whole thing is almost over. Don't let her drag you back in. I set down my phone and looked around my apartment. She was right. This was almost over. The divorce would be final in a few weeks. The assets would be divided. Vivian and I would be legally done. I just had to hold on a little longer. Thursday night, I was watching TV when someone knocked on my door. I looked through the peephole and saw Vivian standing in the hallway. My first instinct was to not answer, to pretend I wasn't home, to avoid the confrontation, but then I thought about what Detective Brennan had said, about Vivian being frustrated, about her seeming certain I was involved in the vandalism. I opened the door. What are you doing here? We need to talk. She looked different than the last time I'd seen her. Tired, older, like the weight of everything was finally catching up to her. There's nothing to talk about. Yes, there is. Can I come in? No. Garrett, please, 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. I stepped aside and let her in. She walked into my living room and looked around at the sparse furniture, the boxes I still hadn't unpacked, the life I'd cobbled together in the aftermath of our marriage. This is where you're living now? She asked. Yes. It's very minimal. It's what I can afford on my own. She turned to face me. I didn't come here to judge your apartment. I came here to ask you directly, did you vandalize my house? No. The police said you have an alibi. I do. But you could have hired someone. You could have paid someone to do it while you stayed home. I almost laughed. Do you hear yourself? Do you hear how paranoid you sound? I'm not paranoid. Someone destroyed my property. Someone who knows where I live and knows about the divorce and knows... She stopped. It was you. I know it was you. It wasn't. But even if it was, why do you care? We're getting divorced. Our lives are separating. What happens to your house or your car or your garage door has nothing to do with me anymore. Because you're still trying to punish me. You're still trying to make me pay for what I did. I don't need to make you pay, Vivian. You're doing that yourself. She stepped closer. What does that mean? It means you lost Trevor. You lost your autonomy at the company. You lost your board seat. You lost your reputation with your investors. You lost your marriage. You're losing employees. And now someone's vandalizing your property and you have no idea who it is. None of that is my doing. That's all you. I made one mistake. You made a lot of mistakes. The affair was just the biggest one. So this is it? This is your revenge? Watching me fall apart? I'm not watching you. I'm not even thinking about you most days. I'm just living my life. I walked to the door and opened it. You need to leave. Garrett, leave, now, before I call the police and report you for violating the terms of the divorce. She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Fear. Real, genuine fear that she was losing control of everything. I didn't want it to end like this, she said quietly. Neither did I. But we don't always get what we want. She walked out. I closed the door and leaned against it, listening to her footsteps fade down the hallway. My phone buzzed. Text from Andrea Colton. Your wife just contacted me. She wants to accelerate the divorce finalization, wants it done in 2 weeks instead of 6. I told her we'd agree if she drops all claims about harassment and vandalism. Your thoughts? I typed back, accept it. Let's be done with this. Will do. Paperwork coming tomorrow. I set down the phone and walked to the window, looked out at the parking lot, saw Vivian's BMW pull out and drive away. 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, this would all be over. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 36 text messages, all from numbers I didn't recognize. I opened the messages one by one. Is it true what they're saying about Vivian Monroe? Did you know about the fraud? How long have you known about the financial irregularities? Can you confirm the investigation? I pulled up a news website and saw the headline immediately. Apex Solutions, CEO under investigation for financial misconduct. The article was detailed, thorough, devastating. According to anonymous sources, the Securities and Exchange Commission had opened an investigation into Apex Solutions following allegations of fraudulent reporting. The company had allegedly inflated revenue numbers, misrepresented client contracts, and provided misleading information to investors. Hastings Ventures had filed a formal complaint after conducting their own internal audit. They'd discovered discrepancies in the financial statements Vivian had provided during funding negotiations, numbers that didn't match actual performance, projections that were wildly optimistic, contracts that existed on paper but not in reality. The investigation was in its early stages, but if the allegations were proven true, Vivian could face civil penalties and potentially criminal charges for securities fraud. I sat on the floor of my apartment, phone in hand, reading the article 3 times. This wasn't about the affair anymore. This was about Vivian's company, about how she'd built her success, about what corners she'd cut to get there. My phone rang. Leonard Price. "Did you know?" he asked immediately. "Know what?" "About the financial issues. About the fraud." "No, I had no idea. Vivian never discussed the company finances with me, not in detail." "Oh. The SEC contacted me yesterday. They want to interview the entire board. They want access to all company records going back 3 years. They're treating this as a major investigation." "Is it true? Did Vivian actually commit fraud?" Leonard was quiet for a moment. "I don't know. I'm on the board, but I didn't have complete visibility into the day-to-day operations. Vivian controlled the financial reporting. She controlled what information we saw. If she was manipulating numbers, she did it well enough that I didn't catch it." "What happens now?" "The company is probably finished. Even if the charges don't stick, the investigation alone will destroy our credibility. Clients will leave, investors will pull out. We'll be bankrupt within 6 months." He paused. "I'm sorry, Garrett. I know you're still technically married to her. This is going to affect you too." "How?" "If the SEC determines she committed fraud, they can go after marital assets. They can freeze accounts, they can seize property. You need to talk to your lawyer immediately and make sure you're protected." He hung up. I called Andrea Colton. "I'm already on it," she said before I could speak. "I saw the news. I'm filing an emergency motion to finalize the divorce immediately and to separate your assets completely from hers. We need to make sure that when this investigation concludes, they don't come after you for her crimes." "Can they do that?" "Depends on timing. If the fraud occurred while you were married, and if you benefited from it in any way, then yes. They can argue you're complicit even if you didn't know about it. But if we can show that you've been separated, that you filed for divorce before the investigation started, that you had no knowledge of her business practices, then we can probably protect you." "What do I need to do?" "Nothing. Let me handle it. Don't talk to reporters, don't talk to investigators, don't talk to anyone from Apex Solutions. Just sit tight and let the legal process work." "What about Vivian? What about her? Is she going to be okay?" Andrea was quiet. "That's not your concern anymore, Garrett. She made her choices. Now she has to face the consequences." Over the next week, I watched Vivian's world collapse in real time. The news kept breaking new stories. More details about the investigation, more allegations, more evidence of financial misconduct. Hastings Ventures formally withdrew their investment and filed suit to recover their capital. Other investors followed. Clients terminated contracts. Employees started resigning. Paige texted me updates. "The office is chaos. People are clearing out their desks. Vivian hasn't been in for 3 days. Nobody knows where she is. Leonard just announced the company is filing for bankruptcy. We're all being laid off. Vivian's lawyer held a press conference. She's denying everything, says she's being framed. The SEC seized her house this morning. She's out of options. I watched it all from a distance, like I was observing someone else's life fall apart. Someone I used to know, but didn't anymore." 3 days later, Andrea called. "The divorce is final," she said. "Judge signed off this morning. All assets have been divided according to our agreement. You're officially no longer married to Vivian Monroe." "What about the investigation? Does it affect me?" "I made it clear in our filings that you had no involvement in or knowledge of the business operations at Apex Solutions. The SEC agreed to leave you out of it. You're clear." "What about Vivian?" "They're building a case. Looks like they have substantial evidence of fraud. If they proceed with charges, she could be looking at significant prison time." "Prison. Vivian. In prison." I tried to process it but couldn't. Vivian was too smart, too successful, too in control to end up in prison. That happened to other people, not to her. "Are you okay?" Andrea asked. "I don't know." "Garrett, this isn't your fault. You didn't make her commit fraud. You didn't make her inflate numbers or mislead investors. She did that herself." "I know. Do you? Because you sound like you're taking responsibility for something that has nothing to do with you." "She's still my—" I stopped. "She was my wife for 11 years. I can't just turn that off." "You don't have to turn it off, but you do have to let her face the consequences of her own actions. That's not cruelty. That's justice." She hung up. I sat in my apartment and thought about justice, about how I'd wanted consequences for Vivian, how I'd documented evidence and built cases and threatened to expose her. But I'd never imagined this. I'd never imagined she'd lose everything. Friday afternoon, someone knocked on my door again. This time, it was Leonard Price. "Can we talk?" he asked. I let him in. He looked exhausted. Bags under his eyes, rumpled suit, the appearance of someone who hadn't slept in days. "I'm trying to salvage what's left of Apex Solutions," he said, "which is basically nothing. But there are severance payments owed to employees. There are client obligations we need to fulfill. There's cleanup work that has to be done. And I'm doing it all alone because Vivian's in hiding and everyone else has abandoned ship." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I need to know. Did you know about the fraud?" "No." "Did you suspect anything?" "No. Vivian never discussed the company finances with me. I knew she was successful. I knew the company was growing, but I didn't know how or why." Leonard sat down heavily on my couch. She was cooking the books. Started about 2 years ago when growth started slowing. She couldn't hit the projections she'd promised investors, so she started fabricating revenue, creating fake contracts, inflating existing deals. By the time I figured it out, it was too late. The numbers were too far gone. The lies were too big. "When did you figure it out?" "About a month ago, right around the time you gave Roger Hastings evidence of the affair. I was reviewing financials for our quarterly board meeting and noticed discrepancies. At first, I thought it was accounting errors. Then I realized it was systematic, intentional, fraud." "Did you report it?" "I told Roger Hastings. Told him we had bigger problems than Trevor's affair. Told him he needed to audit the company before investing any more money. He did, and that audit uncovered everything." I leaned against the wall. "So all of this, the investigation, the bankruptcy, everything, that started because you told Roger?" "Yes, and I don't regret it. What Vivian did was illegal. People invested money based on false information. That's fraud. It needed to be exposed. Even though it destroyed the company? Even though 37 people lost their jobs? Those jobs were built on lies. The company was going to collapse eventually. I just accelerated the timeline." Leonard looked at me. "You understand that, don't you? Sometimes destroying something broken is better than trying to hold it together." I understood completely. "Why are you really here?" I asked. "Because I need you to know that this wasn't your fault. I know you've been carrying guilt about the affair exposure, about giving Roger evidence, about all of it. But the real problems at Apex Solutions had nothing to do with you. Vivian was committing fraud long before you discovered the affair. She was always going to get caught. You just happened to be there when it happened." "That's supposed to make me feel better?" "I don't know, but it's the truth." Leonard stood up. "I'm going to spend the next 6 months cleaning up this mess. Then I'm done with startup companies, done with ambitious CEOs who cut corners, done with all of it." "What will you do?" "I don't know. Maybe consulting, maybe teaching, maybe nothing for a while." He walked to the door. "Take care of yourself, Garrett, and try not to carry Vivian's sins on your shoulders. She made her choices. Now she gets to live with them." He left. I stood in my apartment for a long time, processing everything he'd said. Vivian had been committing fraud for 2 years. 2 years of fake contracts and inflated revenue and lies told to investors. And I'd never known. I'd been married to her, living in the same house, sharing the same life, and I'd never seen it. Maybe because I'd stopped looking, stopped paying attention, stopped caring about what she was doing as long as it didn't directly affect me, or maybe because Vivian was just that good at lying. 3 weeks later, I got a call from an unknown number. "Garrett?" It took me a moment to recognize the voice. Vivian. "How did you get this number?" "I still have your contact information. Can we meet? I need to talk to you." "No. Please. One last conversation. Then I'll never contact you again." "We're divorced. There's nothing to talk about." "There's everything to talk about. Please, Garrett. I'm asking for 30 minutes. I should have said no, should have hung up, should have blocked her number and moved on with my life. Instead, I said, "Where?" "The park on Henderson Street, the one with the lake. Do you remember?" I remembered. We'd gone there on our 3rd date, had walked around the lake holding hands while Vivian talked about her dreams for the future, her plans to build a company, her vision of success. 11 years ago, she'd been so full of hope. "When?" I asked. "Now. I'm already here." I drove to the park. It was late afternoon, the sun low and golden, casting long shadows across the walking path. The lake was calm, reflecting the sky like glass. A few people were scattered around, joggers, families, couples sitting on benches. Vivian was standing by the water, looking out at the lake. She was wearing jeans and a plain sweater, no makeup, hair pulled back. She looked smaller than I remembered, vulnerable. I walked up beside her and stood there silently. "Thank you for coming," she said without looking at me. "What do you want, Vivian?" "To apologize." "For what? The affair, the lies, the fraud? You're going to need to be more specific." She finally turned to face me. Her eyes were red. She'd been crying. For all of it. For how I treated you. For how I took you for granted. For how I destroyed our marriage because I was too arrogant to see what I was throwing away. "That's a nice speech. You practice it?" "I'm serious." "So am I. You don't get to stand here and apologize and expect me to forgive you. You don't get absolution just because you're finally facing consequences. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for you to understand why I did what I did. I understand perfectly. You wanted success more than you wanted integrity. You wanted control more than you wanted honesty. You wanted to win more than you wanted a real relationship. That's who you are, Vivian. That's who you've always been." She looked away. "That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair, but I'm done pretending otherwise." We stood in silence for a moment. A family walked past, the kids laughing and running ahead while the parents followed slowly. "The SEC is charging me," Vivian said quietly. "Securities fraud. Multiple counts. My lawyer says I'm looking at 5 to 7 years if convicted." "I heard." "Did you also hear that I lost everything? The house, the company, my savings, all of it seized or frozen pending the investigation. I'm living in a motel. I have about $300 to my name, and no one will return my calls." "What do you want me to say? That I'm sorry? That I feel bad for you?" "I want you to say that you believe me when I tell you I never meant for any of this to happen. I never meant to hurt you. I never meant to destroy everything. But you did. Intent doesn't matter when the damage is done." She turned to face me fully. "Do you hate me?" "No." "Do you feel anything when you look at me?" I looked at her, really looked at her. At the woman I'd married 11 years ago. The woman I'd loved. The woman who'd sent me to the guest room and had an affair and lied about where she was and who she was with. The woman who was now facing prison time for fraud. "I feel sad," I said. "Sad that it came to this. Sad that you couldn't have been honest. Sad that we wasted 11 years building something that was never going to last." "That's it? Just sad?" "What else should I feel? You made your choices. I made mine. Now we both have to live with them. My choices destroyed everything. Yours protected you." "My choices protected me because I learned from watching you. I learned that you can't control everything. That trying to manipulate outcomes just makes things worse. That honesty is better than strategy." Vivian laughed bitterly. "Look where honesty got me." "You were never honest, Vivian. That's the problem. You lied to me. You lied to Trevor. You lied to your investors. You lied to yourself. You built an entire life on lies, and you're surprised when it all collapsed?" "I was trying to survive." "No, you were trying to win. There's a difference." She was crying now. Real tears. Not manipulative ones. Not strategic ones. Just genuine grief for everything she'd lost. "I don't know what to do," she said. "I don't know how to come back from this." "Maybe you don't. Maybe some things can't be fixed." "That's cruel." "It's realistic. You committed fraud. You hurt people. You destroyed a company and cost people their jobs and their livelihoods. You don't get to just walk away from that and start over." "So what? I just accept that my life is over? That I'm going to prison and everything I built was for nothing?" "You accept that actions have consequences. You accept responsibility. You stop blaming everyone else, and you face what you did." She looked at me for a long moment. "You've changed." "So have you, except I changed for the better." "Did you? Or did you just become what you needed to be to survive me?" That hit harder than I expected, because maybe she was right. Maybe I had become someone different, someone harder, someone who documented evidence and made threats and watched his wife's world collapse without intervening. But maybe that was okay. Maybe I needed to become that person to protect myself. "I'm leaving now," I said. "This is the last time we're going to talk. The last time you're going to call me, the last time you're going to ask me for anything. We're done, Vivian. Completely done." "Wait," she grabbed my arm. "There's one more thing I need to tell you." "What?" "Trevor didn't move to Colorado because he got a new job. He moved because I paid him to leave." I stared at her. "What?" "After Hastings fired him, he threatened to go public with details about our relationship. He threatened to expose everything unless I paid him off. So I did. $50,000. Everything I had in my personal savings. I gave it to him, and he left." "You're saying Trevor blackmailed you?" "I'm saying Trevor was smarter than either of us gave him credit for. He knew the affair could destroy both of us, and he used that leverage to get paid." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserve to know that you weren't the only one who got screwed in this situation. Trevor used both of us. He used me for the funding. He used you for I don't even know what. But he walked away clean while we both ended up paying for it. I thought about Trevor, about his house being abandoned, about him moving to Colorado, about starting over somewhere new with $50,000 and no consequences. He got away with it, I said. He did, and that's the real injustice here. Not what happened between you and me. Not the divorce or the investigation or any of it. The fact that Trevor Ashford faced no consequences while both of our lives fell apart. She let go of my arm. I'm sorry for everything, Garrett. I really am. And I hope someday you can forgive me, but if you can't, I understand. Goodbye, Vivian. I walked away, didn't look back, didn't stop. Just walked to my truck and drove away from the park and from my former wife and from the 11 years of marriage that had ended in betrayal and lies and consequences. That night, I sat in my apartment and thought about everything that had happened. The guest room, the affair, the evidence, the threats, the investigation, the fraud, the collapse. All of it led to this moment. Me, alone, starting over. I'd wanted revenge. I'd wanted consequences. I'd wanted Vivian to pay for what she'd done. And she had paid, more than I'd ever imagined. She'd lost her company, her house, her savings, her reputation, her freedom. And I'd lost, what exactly? A marriage that wasn't working. A wife who didn't respect me. A life built on someone else's ambition instead of my own. I'd lost things that needed to be lost. And I'd gained something I didn't have before. The ability to walk away when something wasn't right. The strength to protect myself instead of trying to protect someone who didn't deserve it. The understanding that you can't control what other people do, you can only control how you respond. Those were hard lessons. Painful lessons. But they were necessary. My phone buzzed. Text from Paige. I heard about your meeting with Vivian. Are you okay? I'm fine. It's finally over. Good. You deserve better than what you went through. We all do. True. Hey, my new company is hiring operations managers. Want me to send you the posting? I looked around my apartment, at the sparse furniture, the empty walls, the temporary life I'd been living while I waited for the divorce to finalize. It was time to stop waiting. Time to build something real. Yeah, send it over. Will do. Take care of yourself, Garrett, and remember, what happened with Vivian doesn't define you, how you move forward does. I set down my phone and looked at the whiteboard I'd rolled up and shoved in the closet weeks ago. Tomorrow I would throw it away. Tonight I would sleep. And when I woke up, I would start building a life that was actually mine. Not Vivian's, not anyone else's. Mine. 2 months later, I started my new job. The company was bigger than Meridian Freight, but the work was similar. Logistics, operations, problem solving. Except this time I was managing a team instead of just coordinating routes. This time I had more responsibility, more authority, more opportunity. Paige worked in a different department, but we had lunch together once a week. She filled me in on the Apex Solutions fallout, how Vivian had taken a plea deal, how she'd gotten 4 years instead of 7, how she was now serving time at a minimum security facility 2 hours away. Leonard shut down the company officially last month. Paige told me over sandwiches in the company cafeteria. All assets liquidated, all debts paid as much as possible. He sent out a final email to all former employees apologizing for how it ended. How's he doing? Teaching business ethics at a community college. Says he's never going back to the corporate world. Can't blame him. Yeah. Paige took a bite of her sandwich. You know what's weird? I saw Trevor a few weeks ago. I looked up. Where? At a coffee shop downtown. He was with some woman. Looked cozy. I didn't talk to him, but he saw me and pretended he didn't. He's still in town? I guess Colorado didn't work out. Or maybe he spent all of Vivian's money and had to come back. I thought about that. About Trevor moving away, then coming back. About him facing no real consequences for his role in everything that happened. Doesn't matter, I said. He's not my problem. No, he's not. None of them are. Paige smiled. You look good, by the way. Happier. I feel happier. Good. You deserve it. We finished lunch and went back to work. 3 months after that, I moved into a real apartment. Not a temporary place with minimal furniture and boxes I never unpacked. A real apartment with a bedroom and a living room and a kitchen that had actual counter space. I bought furniture that I liked instead of just what was cheap. I hung pictures on the walls. I made it feel like home. The first night I spent there, I ordered pizza and sat on my new couch in my new living room and watched TV without thinking about Vivian or Trevor or divorce proceedings or evidence files. I just existed, and it felt incredible. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I got a letter. It was from Vivian, postmarked from the correctional facility where she was serving her sentence. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity won. Dear Garrett, I don't expect you to respond to this letter. I don't even expect you to read it. But I needed to write it anyway. I've had a lot of time to think over the past few months about my choices, about my mistakes, about what I could have done differently, and I've realized something. I was never good at being married. I was good at being successful, good at building companies, good at winning, but I was terrible at the things that actually matter, like honesty, like respect, like loving someone without trying to control them. You deserved better than what I gave you. You deserved a partner who saw you as an equal, not as an accessory to their ambition. You deserved someone who came home at the end of the day and actually wanted to be there, not someone who saw home as just another obligation. I'm sorry I couldn't be that person. I'm sorry I sent you to the guest room instead of apologizing. I'm sorry I had the affair instead of being honest about what I needed. I'm sorry I destroyed our marriage and then tried to destroy you when you wouldn't let me control the narrative. I know sorry doesn't fix anything. I know it doesn't undo the damage, but I needed to say it anyway. I hope you're happy. I hope you've found a life that makes you feel valued and respected and seen. You deserve all of that. I won't contact you again. Take care, Vivian. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it up, put it back in the envelope, and filed it away in a drawer. Not because I forgave her, not because it changed anything, but because it was closure. Real closure. The kind that comes from someone finally taking responsibility instead of making excuses. And that was enough. 1 year after the divorce, I was at a work event, some company party celebrating a successful quarter, when I met someone. Her name was Maya. She worked in accounting, had a laugh that made everyone around her smile, and asked me thoughtful questions instead of just talking about herself. We ended up talking for 2 hours about nothing important. Favorite books, worst travel experiences, the logistics of planning a cross-country road trip. When the party ended, she asked if I wanted to get coffee sometime. I said yes. On our 3rd date, Maya asked about my previous relationships. We were at a restaurant, sharing dessert, and she said it casually but with genuine interest. So what's your story? Married before? Serious relationships? I could have lied, could have downplayed it, could have said 1 serious relationship and left it at that. Instead, I told her the truth. I was married for 11 years. She had an affair, we got divorced. It was messy, but it's over now. Maya nodded thoughtfully. That must have been hard. It was, but I learned a lot from it. Like what? Like I can't control what other people do. Like honesty matters more than strategy. Like sometimes the best revenge is just moving on and building a better life. That's very mature of you. I didn't feel mature at the time, but looking back, I'm glad I handled it the way I did. Which was how? I thought about the whiteboard, the evidence files, the threats, the choice not to completely destroy Vivian when I had the power to do so. I protected myself without destroying her completely. I took what I learned and used it to become better instead of bitter. Maya smiled. I like that. A lot of people would have chosen bitter. I almost did, but I realized that being bitter just meant she was still controlling my life, and I was done letting her do that. We finished dessert and walked around the city, holding hands, talking about the future instead of the past. And for the first time in over a year, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. 2 years after the divorce, I got a message from Leonard Price. Thought you'd want to know? Vivian was released early for good behavior. She's out now, moving to another state for a fresh start. Wanted to make sure you heard it from me instead of through the grapevine. I stared at the message for a moment. Vivian was out, free, starting over somewhere new. I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no curiosity about where she was going or what she was doing. Just nothing, and that felt like the ultimate victory. I typed back, "Thanks for letting me know. Hope she figures her life out. Hope you already have." I have. I set down my phone and looked around my apartment. My real apartment, the one I'd made into a home. Maya was in the kitchen making dinner, singing along to music playing from her phone. We'd been dating for almost a year now. She'd moved in 3 months ago. Life was good, not perfect, not without challenges, but good. Real. Mine. I walked into the kitchen and wrapped my arms around Maya from behind. She leaned back into me and smiled. "What's that for?" she asked. "Just happy," I said. "About what?" "About being here, about you, about everything working out the way it did." She turned around and kissed me. "Me too." We finished making dinner together, ate on the couch while watching a movie neither of us paid attention to, and fell asleep together in the bed I'd bought for myself when I decided to stop living in temporary spaces. And somewhere, in another state, Vivian was starting over. And somewhere, probably still in this city, Trevor was living his consequence-free life. But that didn't matter anymore, because I'd learned the most important lesson of all. You can't control what happens to you, but you can always control what you do next. And I'd chosen to build something new instead of tearing down what was already broken. That was enough. That was everything.